Story 1, The Mild THATREPATS. The truck stop appeared in my headlights for the fourth time, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was going to die on this road. The same flickering mobile sign, same rust-orange pickup parked at pump 3, same attendant visible through the smudged window frozen mid-reach toward the cigarette display. I'd passed this exact scene at 11:47 p.m., then again at 12:23 a.m., then at 1:15 a.m., and now I checked my phone 2:34 a.m. 47 miles between each appearance. 47 miles of identical white dashes, identical fence posts, identical reflective markers that caught my lights at identical angles. My name is Robert Hayes. I've been hauling refrigerated freight for Cisco for 11 years, and I know every truck stop between Omaha and Denver like I know the scar on my left knuckle. This stop, Miller's Gas and Diesel outside Ogallala, Nebraska, I've fueled up at maybe 200 times, but I've never seen it 4 times in one night. I didn't stop, couldn't stop. Some instinct screamed that if I stopped, if I broke the pattern, something worse than repetition would happen. The temperature gauge inside my cab read 68 degrees, but my breath came out in visible clouds. The radio had died an hour ago, cutting off mid-word during a commercial for farm insurance. Now there was only static, but underneath the static, if I listened carefully, I could hear my own voice. Distant, distorted, saying words I hadn't spoken yet. "Come on, come on, come on," I muttered, pressing harder on the accelerator. The reefer unit behind me hummed its refrigerated song, keeping 17,000 pounds of frozen chicken at exactly -10 degrees. The shipping manifest said the load was bound for a restaurant depot in Cheyenne. Simple run, 523 miles. I'd done it dozens of times. Mile marker 89 appeared in my lights. I'd been watching the markers obsessively since the repetition started. They counted up normally 89, 90, 91 until mile marker 126. Then something happened. The numbers kept ascending, but the landscape looped. At marker 126, reality folded back on itself like a ribbon twisted into a Möbius strip. My phone showed 2:41 a.m., 7 minutes since the last loop. If the pattern held, I had about 35 minutes before I saw Miller's Gas and Diesel for the 5th time. I'd tried calling 911 during the second loop. The dispatcher answered, took my information, asked if I was injured or in immediate danger. I tried to explain about the repeating road, and she'd gone quiet for a long moment before asking if I'd been drinking. The call dropped at mile marker 126. When I tried to call back, my phone showed 5 bars of signal but wouldn't connect to anything. The fence posts on my right began at marker 93. Wooden, weathered gray. Exactly 127 of them before they gave way to a barbed wire fence at marker 107. I knew because I'd counted them during the second loop. During the third loop, I'd noticed something that made my stomach clench. The fence posts were lining at slightly different angles, as if they were moving, slowly, incrementally, tilting further away from the road with each repetition. At marker 98, I saw the dead deer. Same position as the previous loops, lying on the shoulder, legs splayed at wrong angles, but its head was turned further toward the road now. During the first loop, it had been facing away. Second loop turned slightly. Third loop facing the road. Now fourth loop, its neck was craned at an impossible angle, skull rotated nearly 180 degrees, empty eye sockets aimed directly at the path my truck would take. I was breathing too fast, hyperventilating. The clouds of my breath were getting thicker, more opaque. The temperature gauge still read 68, but ice was forming on the inside of my windshield, delicate fractals spreading from the corners. Mile marker 107. The barbed wire fence began 4 strands. The top strand had 89 barbs visible in my headlight range. I knew this because I'd counted them too, searching for any detail that might be different, any proof that I was actually moving forward and not trapped in some impossible loop. But the barbs were always 89. The fence posts always tilted at their incrementally increasing angles. The road always curved in the same gentle arc. My CB radio crackled to life at marker 113. It shouldn't have worked. I'd unplugged it after it started broadcasting nothing but screaming during the first loop. But now a voice came through, calm and professional. A westbound Cisco truck, this is Nebraska State Patrol. You need to pull over immediately. I grabbed the receiver with shaking hands. Thank God, this is Robert Hayes. I'm trapped in some kind of... You need to pull over, Mr. Hayes. You're driving a hazardous route. Pull over now. What hazardous route? I'm on I-80, same as always. But something's wrong, I keep. Mr. Hayes. The voice was louder now, urgent. You are not on I-80. Look at your odometer. I looked at the age. The numbers were spinning backward. 287,634 miles. 287,633. 287,632. Counting down steadily as I drove forward. What the fuck is happening? My voice came out as a whimper. Pull over, get out of the truck, walk away from the vehicle. Do it now, Mr. Hayes. Mile marker 126 appeared in my headlights. The road ahead began to shimmer like heat mirages on summer asphalt, except it was February and 17 degrees outside. The white dashes bent upward, defying physics, curving into impossible angles. I could see Miller's gas and diesel materializing in the distance, flickering into existence like a badly tuned television signal. I'm at marker 126, I said into the CB. It's happening again. Get out of the truck. But I couldn't. My hands wouldn't release the steering wheel. My foot wouldn't lift from the accelerator. I was locked in place, muscles rigid, as if my body knew something my mind refused to accept. Well, the truck stop solidified ahead. Same flickering sign, same rust-orange pickup, same attendant reaching for the cigarette display, 5th loop, 3:08 a.m. As I passed the truck stop, I saw something I hadn't noticed in the previous loops. A figure standing beside the fuel pumps, tall, wearing what looked like a trucker's jacket, watching my truck go by. As my headlights swept across the figure, I saw its face. Oh, it was me. Not similar to me, not someone who looked like me. Me, same scar above my left eyebrow, same Cisco cap, same expression of abject terror I'd been wearing for the past 3 hours. The figure's mouth opened, and even though I was doing 65 miles per hour and there was no way I could have heard anything over my engine, I heard my own voice screaming, "Don't go to 126. The CB crackled again. Mr. Hayes, listen very carefully. Your truck is not hauling chicken. Check your manifest again. Read what it actually says. My clipboard was on the passenger seat. I'd glanced at the manifest a dozen times tonight, always seeing the same thing: frozen chicken products, destination Cheney Restaurant Depot. But now, with one hand white-knuckled on the wheel, I pulled the clipboard closer. The words writhed on the page like living things. The letters rearranged themselves as I watched, reforming into different shapes: human remains. Destination, mile 126. Contents, Robert Hayes. No, I whispered, no, no, no. Mile marker 89. The loop was tightening, 47 miles the first time, then 43 miles, then 36 miles. Now it had collapsed to 23 miles. The repetitions were accelerating, the ribbon of road folding tighter and tighter around marker 126. The fence posts on my right were leaning at 45-degree angles now, all pointing away from the road as if pushed by an invisible wind. The dead deer was gone. In its place at marker 98 stood another figure, this one I didn't recognize. A woman in a waitress uniform from maybe the 1950s, her hair done up in victory rolls, her face gray and slack. As I passed, her eyes tracked my truck with the mechanical precision of a security camera. Marker 107. The barbed wire fence was moving, undulating. The barbs had multiplied, covering every inch of the wire in sharp points that glinted in my headlights like teeth. As at marker 113, the CB voice returned, but it had changed. Still professional, still calm, but underneath I could hear something else. Something vast and patient and utterly inhuman. Mr. Hayes, you need to understand what's happening. The road doesn't repeat. The road is digesting. You've been inside it since marker 126 on your first pass. Everything since then has been the road processing you, breaking you down, learning you. I don't understand. I was crying now, tears freezing on my cheeks. Your truck is a coffin, Mr. Hayes. Your cargo is a coffin. This road is a coffin. We've been collecting drivers for 73 years, adding them to the route. You saw one earlier, the waitress at marker 98. She drove a delivery van in 1952, took a wrong turn, never found her way out. Mile marker 126. This time when I reached it, the shimmer didn't come. Instead, the road ahead simply ended, not in a barrier or a cliff, but in nothing, absolute void. My headlights couldn't penetrate it. It was like driving toward the edge of existence. I slammed on the brakes. The truck lurched, air brakes screaming, but I didn't slow down. The speedometer read 65, but the engine was off. I'd turned the key without realizing it. The truck was coasting toward the void, pulled by something I couldn't see. Please, I begged into the CB. Please, I have a daughter, she's 9. I promised I'd be home for her birthday on Thursday. You were home for her birthday, Mr. Hayes. You died on March 14, 2023, when you fell asleep at mile marker 126 and crossed the median into oncoming traffic. Your truck rolled 7 times. The impact was instantaneous. You felt nothing. No, I'm alive, I'm here, Oh, you're an echo, a ghost in the machineries. The road collects you all, keeps you driving, forever. The void swallowed my headlights, then my hood, then my windshield. The darkness was absolute, not the darkness of night, but the darkness of negation, of unbeing. In the final second before I disappeared completely, I saw the interior of my cab in perfect detail. Every scratch on the dashboard, every stain on the seat. The picture of my daughter taped to the sun visor, her gap-toothed smile frozen in perpetual joy. And I saw my own hands on the wheel, transparent now, fading, the bones visible underneath the skin. The CB crackled one last time. Welcome to the route, Mr. Hayes. Miller's gas and diesel appears in 3, 2, 1. The truck stop materialized in headlights I no longer had. Same flickering sign, same rust-orange pickup, same attendant reaching for cigarettes. And standing beside the fuel pumps watching was a figure in a Cisco jacket with a scar above his left eyebrow. The odometer reads 0. Mile marker 89 approached in the distance. and I pressed the accelerator that my foot couldn't feel, beginning the loop again, forever counting the fence posts. Forever watching the numbers climb toward 126. Forever dying and never quite dead, just another ghost feeding the infinite highway with my endless repetition. My CB crackled. Westbound Cisco truck, this is Nebraska State Patrol. You need to pull over immediately. And I heard myself answer the words automatic, scripted, inevitable. Thank God. This is Robert Hayes. I'm trapped in some kind of. Story 2, The Breathing Cargo. The sealed container in my trailer had been exhaling for the past 45 minutes, and the rhythm was starting to match my own breathing. I noticed it first at the weigh station outside Barstow. The inspector waved me through without checking the manifest. Unusual, but I wasn't complaining, and as I pulled back onto I-40 eastbound, I heard it. A long, slow exhalation, like wind through a cave mouth, coming from the 40-foot container I'd picked up at the port of Long Beach 6 hours earlier. Patricia Sullivan, 23 years with Werner Enterprises, and I'd hauled everything from live chickens to high-end electronics to military equipment I wasn't supposed to ask about. But I'd never hauled anything that breathed. The manifest listed the contents as industrial refrigeration components bound for a warehouse in Amarillo, Texas. The container was sealed with a customs lock I had no key for. Standard intermodal shipping, I wasn't supposed to open it, wasn't supposed to know what was inside, just supposed to deliver it. But industrial components don't breathe. The exhalations came every 17 seconds. I'd been counting since Barstow, watching the dashboard clock tick off the intervals with mechanical precision. 17 seconds of silence. Then the sound, a deep, wet exhale that I could feel through the cab, vibrating up through the fifth wheel and into my spine. It was 9:47 p.m., high desert dark. Nothing but my headlights and the stars and the occasional pair of tail lights miles ahead on the empty highway. The container sat behind me, 40 feet of corrugated steel exhaling. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Pressure equalization, temperature differential, some mechanical process I didn't understand. But at the Ludlow exit, the exhalations changed. They became deeper, more forceful. And between exhalations, in that 17-second silence, I started hearing something else. A whispering. Not words, not exactly. More like the ghost of words, syllables shaped by something that didn't have vocal cords. The sound was coming through the sleeper berth wall, which meant it was coming from inside the container, which was impossible because the thing was sealed tight, airtight, designed for ocean crossage. As I pulled over at a rest stop outside Fenner, my hands were shaking as I killed the engine. The breathing didn't stop. If anything, it got louder without the road noise to mask it. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed down from the cab. The desert night was cold, probably 40 degrees, but I was sweating. The container loomed in the darkness, a black rectangle against black sky. I walked along its length, trailing my hand on the corrugated metal. It was warm, not hot, but warm like living skin, and under my palm I could feel the expansion and contraction. The container was breathing. The customs lock glinted in my flashlight beam. Heavy-duty padlock, no chance of breaking it without bolt cutters. But there were ventilation slats near the top of the container, thin horizontal gaps designed to prevent condensation buildup. I'd need to climb up to reach them. The rear trailer step gave me access to the top of the tandem axles. From there, I could stretch up and grip the top edge of the container, pulling myself high enough to peer through the ventilation slat. The smell hit me first. Copper and ozone and something organic like meat gone bad in a broken freezer. M's. My stomach lurched. I pressed my eye to the slat, shining the flashlight inside. At first, I saw nothing, just darkness. Then the breathing came again, a massive inhalation, and in the sound I heard multiple sources. Not one breath, but many, overlapping, synchronizing. My flashlight beam caught movement. Something pale and glistening shifted in the container's interior. My angle was wrong, I couldn't see clearly. I adjusted my grip, wedging my toe into a gap in the container's rear door frame, pulling myself higher. The flashlight beam swept across the interior, and I saw them. Bodies. Not corpses, not exactly. They were suspended in some kind of translucent membrane that hung from the container ceiling like cocoons. I counted 14 visible from my position, maybe more deeper in. Each one was naked, pale, skin slightly luminescent in the flashlight beam. Their chests rose and fell in perfect unison. The breathing I'd been hearing. One of them was facing me. A man maybe 40 years old, eyes closed, expression peaceful. As I watched, his eyes snapped open. They were completely black. No whites, no iris, just black, reflective like beetle shells. His mouth opened in sync with the next exhalation, and I saw that his tongue had been replaced with something else. Something that writhed. I lost my grip and fell, landing hard on the trailer axles, then tumbling to the asphalt. The flashlight skittered away, beam spinning across the desert. I lay there, gasping, staring up at the container that held 14 breathing bodies wrapped in membranes like larvae waiting to hatch. My phone showed 10:23 p.m. and 0 signal bars. Of course. The rest stop was empty except for my rig and one other truck parked far at the other end, lights off, possibly the driver sleeping. I couldn't see clearly in the darkness. I needed to call the police. FBI, somebody. This was human trafficking or something worse, something I didn't have words for. But my phone was useless, and the nearest town with a payphone was probably Needles, 30 miles back west. I climbed back into my cab, hands still shaking, and reached for the CB radio. Channel 19, the trucker channel, usually busy with chatter. But when I keyed the mic, all I got was static. Then, underneath the static, I heard it again. The whispering, coming through the CB speaker now. I'm Sullivan, Patricia Sullivan, we know you. I dropped the mic like it had burned me. The breathing was louder now, resonating through the cab, not just coming from the container anymore, but from everywhere. The seat beneath me rose and fell slightly with each exhalation. The steering wheel was warm under my hands, pulsing. As I turned the key, the engine caught, roared to life. I had to get moving, had to get to somewhere with people, with help, with witnesses. I couldn't stay parked here with those things breathing behind me. As I pulled back onto I-40, the whispering resolved into something clearer. Words, full sentences, coming from the CB speaker, the radio, the air vents, the very walls of the cab. You were chosen, Patricia. The manifest was written for you. You picked up the container because we wanted you to pick it up. You're driving east because we want you to drive east. You will arrive at Amarillo because we need you to arrive. Who are you? I screamed at the empty cab. What the fuck do you want? The answer came from 14 voices speaking in perfect unison. We want to show you what you're carrying. We want you to understand. Pull over at mile marker 107. Look inside, become. Mile marker 107 was 7 miles ahead according to my GPS. I pressed harder on the accelerator, speeding up instead of slowing down, 70 miles per hour. 80. The container swayed behind me, breathing, whispering, waiting. At marker 104, my engine died, just cut out completely like I'd turned the key off. The cab went dark, all the dashboard lights extinguished. My rig coasted, slowing, and I had no power steering, no air brakes, just momentum carrying me forward onto the shoulder. The truck stopped exactly at mile marker 107. The breathing behind me intensified. I could hear them now without the CB. 14 voices chanting in a language I didn't recognize but somehow understood. They were calling me, inviting me, promising me transformation. The container doors were opening. I could hear the metal groaning, the customs lock breaking despite being supposedly unbreakable. I was trapped in my cab with no power, no lights, no escape, and behind me the doors were swinging wide. Something pale stepped down from the container. I could see it in my mirror, illuminated by starlight. The man with the black eyes. His membrane had torn open, the translucent material hanging from his shoulders like a cloak. He walked toward my cab with jerky, uncertain steps, like someone learning to use their legs for the first time. Behind him, others were emerging. 13 more figures, pale and glistening, membranes falling. Away, revealing bodies that were human-shaped but wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Too many joints in the fingers. Skin that seemed to ripple independently of the muscles underneath. Faces that could shift between expressions too quickly, like they were cycling through learned behaviors. As the man reached my door, tapped on the window with fingers that bent backward at the final knuckle. His black eyes met mine, and he smiled with too many teeth. Patricia Sullivan, he said, voice perfectly modulated, perfectly human, perfectly wrong. We've been waiting for you. The container is empty now, it needs a new passenger. I'm not getting out of this truck, I said, but even as I said it, I felt my hand reaching for the door handle. You are, he said, because you're curious, because you want to know what it feels like, because you've been driving for 23 years and you're tired, Patricia, so tired, and we can make the tired stop. We can make everything stop, you just have to come with us. My hand was turning the door handle. I was fighting it, but my muscles wouldn't obey. Something in his voice, in their synchronized breathing, was overriding my nervous system. The door swung open. The desert air hit me, shockingly cold. I could see my breath, but so could they, all 14 of them now surrounding my truck, breathing in perfect synchronization, watching me with their beetle-black eyes. A step down, the man said. Join us. Complete the delivery. My foot touched the step, then the asphalt. I was standing outside my truck, surrounded by things that looked like people but weren't, and the container behind me was empty now, doors wide, interior dark, waiting. They parted to let me through, forming a corridor between my cab and the container opening. The membrane pieces that had held them glistened on the container floor like shed skin. There was one left intact, hanging from the ceiling, empty, waiting. The manifest said industrial refrigeration components. I heard myself say, "What are you?" "We are the components," they said in unison. "We are what gets shipped in the dark. We are the cargo that breathes. We are the delivery that's never complete because it keeps collecting drivers. You'll understand once you're inside, once the membrane closes around you, once you learn to breathe with us." As I was at the container opening now, the empty membrane swayed slightly, inviting. I could feel its pull, a gravitational force that had nothing to do with physics and everything to do with the promise whispered in my hindbrain, "Rest, peace, the end of the long haul." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Impossible, no signal out here. But I felt it buzz, and some part of me that was still Patricia Sullivan, still the woman who'd been driving trucks for 23 years, still the person who had a life beyond this highway, made my hand move to my pocket. The screen showed a text message from my daughter. "Mom, when are you getting home? I miss you." It was fake, had to be fake. My daughter was 31 years old, lived in Portland, hadn't called me mom in years, preferred Patricia like we were colleagues. This was a lure, a trick, something they'd generated too. But it worked. The part of me that was still human grabbed onto that text message like a lifeline, and I felt the membranes pull weaken. Just for a second, just enough. I ran. Didn't think about it, didn't analyze it, just turned and sprinted away from the container, away from the breathing things that used to be human, away from the empty membrane waiting to wrap around me. My boots hit the asphalt hard, carrying me into the desert darkness. Behind me, I heard them screaming. All 14 voices, no longer synchronized, no longer calm. Shrieking with rage at the lost delivery, at the broken pattern, at the empty membrane that should have held me. I ran until my lungs burned, until I collapsed in the sand a quarter-mile from the highway, watching my truck from a distance. The figures were climbing back into the container. The doors were closing. And then, impossibly, the truck's engine roared to life. The rig pulled back onto I-40, heading east without a driver. Container sealed, continuing its route to Amarillo, where someone else would be waiting to open those doors, to see what was inside, to step up into that empty membrane. I watched until the taillights disappeared, then I pulled out my phone. Still no signal, but the text from my daughter remained on the screen, impossible and real. "Mom, when are you getting home? I miss you." I started walking west, toward Needles, toward civilization, knowing that somewhere ahead of my abandoned truck, the manifest had already updated itself. Somewhere, a warehouse supervisor was checking their schedule, expecting a delivery. Somewhere, someone else would open those doors. And in 40 feet of corrugated steel rolling through the desert night, 13 membranes hung empty now, waiting for the next rest stop T. The next curious driver, the next person who would hear the breathing and have to look inside. The container was still out there, still breathing, still delivering itself, driver by driver, membrane by membrane, across an America that didn't know what traveled its highways after dark. I walked faster, trying to outpace the rhythm that still echoed in my chest. 17 seconds of silence, then the exhalation, then the whisper of my name carried on desert wind. "Patricia, we're waiting, we're always waiting." Story 3, The Junction That Wasn't There Yesterday. The new highway junction appeared on my route at 3:17 a.m., and by 3:23 a.m. I understood that I'd driven into something that would kill me slowly. Marcus Chen, independent hauler, 12 years on the road, and I knew every exit between Sacramento and Reno like I knew the scars on my hands from changing blown tires in below-zero weather. Highway 80 didn't have an exit at mile marker 54. Yesterday it didn't. Last week it didn't. But tonight the exit was there. A pristine off-ramp with perfect white lines and a green sign reading Juniper FALLS Services 2 MILES. There was no town called Juniper Falls in Nevada. I'd driven this route 417 times. I kept count in a notebook, a little obsessive-compulsive ritual from my days as an Army logistics sergeant. 417 trips, 0 exits at marker 54. My fuel gauge showed an eighth of a tank. I'd planned to refuel in Reno, still 70 miles east, but that was cutting it close with a full load. The sign promised services. My rational brain was screaming that something was wrong, but my fuel gauge was screaming louder. I took the exit. The off-ramp curved down into darkness thicker than normal nighttime, like the headlights couldn't penetrate as far. The road surface was perfect, though no cracks, no wear like it had been poured yesterday. Fresh yellow dividing lines. Reflectors that gleamed too bright, almost luminescent. 2 miles in, the town appeared. Juniper Falls sat in a shallow valley, ringed by hills I'd never seen before despite driving past this area hundreds of times. Population sign 2,847. Main Street stretched ahead, lined with buildings that looked like they'd been transported from the 1950s. Intact neon signs advertising a diner, a motel, a gas station. Everything looked maintained, preserved, wrong. The gas station was the only thing lit up. White fluorescent glow spilling across empty pumps. The sign read Bill's Fuel and Service in red cursive neon and underneath, open 24 hours. A man stood behind the counter inside the station, visible through the plate glass window. He was looking directly at me. I pulled up to the pumps, killed the engine. The sudden silence was absolute. No wind, no insects, no distant highway noise, just the tick of my cooling engine and very faintly music playing from inside the station. Something big band distorted by distance and bad speakers. The fuel pumps were ancient, mechanical rollers instead of digital displays, no credit card readers. I'd have to go inside to pay. The attendant was still staring at me through the window, unmoving, features indistinct in the fluorescent glare. As I climbed down from my cab, boots hitting pavement that should have made sound but somehow didn't. The air tasted wrong, metallic, like licking a battery. And cold, colder than it should be for May in Nevada, my breath visible in clouds that hung too long before dissipating. The station door opened with a cheerful bell that sounded like it was ringing in a different room, distant and muffled. The attendant smiled at me with perfect 1950s courtesy. "Oh, evening, friend, how much fuel you need?" He was young, maybe 25, wearing a pristine gas station uniform with Bill embroidered on the pocket. His skin had a waxy quality like a department store mannequin. His eyes didn't blink. "Fill it up," I said. My voice sounded flat, dampened, like the air was absorbing the sound. "Diesel, both tanks." "Sure thing, you're our first customer in." He glanced at a clock on the wall that showed 3:23 a.m., but the second hand wasn't moving. "A while, you staying at the motel surely keeps rooms ready." Just passing through, how much for the fuel?" Bill's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Oh, we don't take money here in Juniper Falls. We work on a different system. Trade, service, time, you'll figure it out." Warning bells were clanging in my head, but my truck needed fuel, and this was the only station for 70 miles in either direction. Except there shouldn't be a station here at all. Shouldn't be a town. "I'll wait outside," I said. "Suit yourself." Bill's head tilted at an angle that was slightly too far to be natural. "But you might want to look around. Most folks who come through Juniper Falls, they stay a while, get to know the place, becomes real familiar." So I backed out of the station, keeping my eyes on Bill until the door closed between us. Through the window, I watched him pick up a Is an old-style gas pump handle and walk toward my truck with movements that were too smooth, like he was on rails. Main Street was completely empty. No cars parked along the curbs. No lights in any windows except the gas station and further down the motel office. The other buildings, diner, hardware store, barbershop, drugstore, were dark but somehow looked occupied, like people were inside, waiting in the darkness, watching. Bill was filling my tanks with diesel that smelled right, sounded right, looked right in the yellow puddle forming under my truck from the overflow. But the mechanical roller on the pump wasn't turning. The numbers stayed at 0 gallons, $0, no matter how much fuel poured in. "It's all done," Bill called out, hanging up the nozzle with a metallic clank that echoed too long. "Topped off both saddle tanks. That should get you wherever you're going, or wherever you think you're going." "Oh, what's that supposed to mean?" Bill's smile never wavered. "Just that most folks who come through Juniper Falls, they have a hard time finding the way out. Roads get confusing, signs point in circles, you might end up staying longer than you planned." "I'm leaving now." Sure, but you might want to check your GPS first. And your maps. And your sense of direction, they don't work quite right here." I climbed back into my cab, locked the doors, ridiculous gesture, but instinct took over and turned the key. The engine started immediately, sounding healthy, tanks showing full. My GPS showed my location as a blank spot on the map. No roads, no towns, just a gray void where Juniper Falls shouldn't exist. I put the truck in gear and headed back toward the exit ramp, back toward Highway 80, back toward reality. The road out of town should have been a simple 2-mile drive to the on-ramp. But after 2 miles, I was still in Juniper Falls, passing the gas station again, Bill standing outside now, waving cheerfully. I kept driving, past the town limit sign, drove 3 more miles. Turned around to see Juniper Falls still visible in my mirrors, lights twinkling impossibly close. The road was looping, or the town was moving, or space itself had folded into a shape that kept bringing me back here. At 3:47 a.m., I parked on Main Street outside the motel. The Starlight Inn, the neon sign proclaimed in cursive pink letters, "Vacancy, always vacancy." Through the office window, I could see a woman behind the desk. She waved at me with the same mechanical cheer as Bill. I wasn't going inside. I wasn't giving up. There had to be a way out, some road I was missing, some direction I wasn't trying. I drove every street in Juniper Falls. The town was bigger than it looked from the highway. Streets branched off Main, leading to residential areas with perfect houses and perfect lawns and perfect 1950s cars parked in perfect driveways. But no people. Just houses that looked occupied but empty, curtains that moved in windows when I wasn't looking directly at them. As every road eventually curved back to Main Street, every attempt to leave town dead-ended at an invisible barrier. My truck would simply stop moving forward, engine running, wheels spinning on perfect pavement, going nowhere. At 4:15 a.m., I saw another truck. A big rig hauling a refrigerated trailer parked outside the diner. The first vehicle I'd seen besides my own. I pulled up next to it, climbed down, looked in the cab. It's empty, keys in the ignition. The driver's logbook lay open on the passenger seat. The last entry read, "Stopped in Juniper Falls for fuel. Can't find the exit, day 1." I flipped through the logbook. The entries continued. Day 2, day 3, day 7, day 14, day 30, each entry shorter, more desperate, the handwriting deteriorating into frantic scrawls. The last legible entry, day 47, I understand now. The town is eating time. I'm not aging, but I'm disappearing. Can see through my hands. Bill says I'm almost ready for integration. Don't come here. Don't stop. Don't. The rest was illegible scratches. As I dropped the logbook and ran back to my truck, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. I had to get out. Had to escape before I became another logbook entry, another disappeared driver, another person who stopped for fuel and never left. I drove at the town limits going 60 miles per hour, aiming directly at the leaving Juniper FALLS come back soon sign. My truck hit the invisible barrier and stopped dead, no deceleration, just instant zero velocity. The cargo in my trailer shifted forward with a sound like thunder, slamming against the forward wall. Through my windshield, I could see Highway 80 in the distance. Real highway, real traffic, a pair of headlights heading east, oblivious to the town that had appeared beside the road, swallowing vehicles and drivers like a trapdoor spider waiting in its burrow. Bill was walking toward my truck from the gas station, still smiling. Behind him, other figures were emerging from the dark B. Buildings, dozens of them. Men and women in 1950s clothing, moving with that same too-smooth glide, all of them smiling, all of them walking toward me. The woman from the motel office. A man in a barber's outfit, a teenage girl in a waitress uniform, a family of 4 in perfect Sunday clothes, all of them converging on my truck, and through them, literally through their translucent bodies, I could see the buildings behind them. They were ghosts or projections or memories. Or something worse, echoes of people who'd stopped in Juniper Falls and never left, absorbed into whatever this place was, replaying their roles in an endless loop. My CB radio crackled to life. A voice I recognized, my own voice, came through the speaker. Day 1, stopped in Juniper Falls for fuel, can't find the exit. No, I said, no, I'm not staying here. I'm not becoming one of you. Bill reached my door, tapped on the window. You already are, Marcus. The moment you took the exit, you became part of Juniper Falls. The town needs drivers, needs vehicles, needs fresh time to feed on. You'll understand soon. A few more days and you'll see through your hands, feel yourself spreading thin, becoming part of the pavement, part of the buildings, part of the loop. As I looked at my hands on the steering wheel, they were solid, still real. I had time, not much, but enough to think, to plan, to find the flaw in this trap. As the fuel gauge caught my eye, it read empty, both tanks. The fuel Bill had pumped into my truck was gone, vanished, as if it had never existed. Because it hadn't. Nothing in Juniper Falls was real. Not the fuel, not the buildings, not the people. It was all constructed to trap, to hold, to feed. Well, the fuel was fake, I said. The town is fake, you're fake. Bill's smile faltered for the first time. Oh, we're real, just real in a different way. Real like a memory is real. Real like a dream is real. Real enough to keep you here forever. As I turned the key, the engine turned over but didn't catch. Fuel tanks empty. No way to live even if I could break through the barrier. The CB crackled again. Day 2, still can't find the exit. Bill says to relax, says the town provides, says I should check into the motel. My own voice, my own words. A script written in advance, a future already determined. But I hadn't said those words. Hadn't recorded that log entry, which meant the loop wasn't complete yet, which meant I still had a choice. I grabbed my emergency kit from behind the seat. Flares, road triangles, reflective vest. And thank God, a 3-gallon emergency fuel container filled with real diesel from the last real gas station I'd stopped at back in Sacramento when the world still made sense. 3 gallons wouldn't get me far, but it might get me through the barrier. I poured the fuel into my saddle tank, praying to gods I didn't believe in that it would be enough. The ghosts were surrounding my truck now, pressing translucent hands against the windows, leaving no prints, making no sound. Bill was speaking, but I wasn't listening. I turned the key. The engine caught, roared 3 gallons, maybe 30 miles of range, maybe less with a full load. I put the truck in gear, backed up 50 yards, then slammed the accelerator to the floor. The ghosts scattered like smoke. My truck accelerated, hitting 40 miles per hour, then 50, then 60, aimed directly at the barrier that had stopped me before. This time, something was different. The barrier was solid, but my truck had real fuel now, real momentum, real physics behind it, instead of whatever false reality the town had been feeding me. The impact felt like hitting a wall of water. Resistance, then breakthrough, then sudden freedom as my truck punched through into normal space. I was back on Highway 80, real asphalt under my wheels, real stars overhead. In my mirrors, Juniper Falls was fading, the lights dimming, the buildings becoming transparent, then gone, leaving nothing but empty desert and the truth. There was no exit at marker 54. There never had been. The fuel gauge showed empty again. The 3 gallons had burned up in the escape, consumed by the effort of breaking through. My truck coasted, losing speed, and I steered it onto the shoulder just as the engine died. I climbed out and looked back at mile marker 54. Nothing there, no exit, no town, no ghosts. Just highway and desert and the distant lights of Reno glowing on the horizon. My phone showed 3:24 a.m., 7 minutes since I'd first seen the exit. Somehow all of it, the fuel stop, the trapped loops, the ghosts, the escape, had happened in 7 minutes. Or maybe I was still in Juniper Falls, and this was the next layer of the dream, the next level of the trap, and I'd be discovering that truth any moment now. A semi drove past, heading east, engine roaring in the night. The driver didn't slow down, didn't see me, didn't notice the man standing on the shoulder at mile marker 54 where an exit had been and Wasson. The T and might be again for the next driver who needed fuel and saw a sign that wasn't there yesterday. I started walking toward Reno, leaving my truck behind, knowing that when the police found it in the morning, they'd find my logbook open on the seat. And the last entry would read, Day 1, stopped in Juniper Falls for fuel, can't find the exit. Even though I never wrote it, even though I escaped, even though I'm walking away right now, I know that somewhere in some version of reality I brushed against, those words are still being written, will always be written, by every driver who sees the sign and takes the exit and learns too late that some services aren't meant to help you on your journey. They're meant to end it. A story 4, the static frequency. The hitchhiker's face was screaming on every channel of my CB radio, and I'd been listening to him die for the past 90 miles. I picked him up at a rest stop outside Billings, Montana, at 10:47 p.m. on November 3, 2024. Just a kid, maybe 19, shivering in a thin jacket, thumb out, sign reading anywhere south. I'd been driving trucks long enough to know better than to pick up hitchhikers. Insurance liability, company policy, basic common sense. But something about him reminded me of my nephew, and it was 16 degrees outside. and I told myself I'd drop him at the next truck stop. His name was Danny Reeves, and he was dead by 11:03 p.m. Sarah Mitchell, Schneider National Driver, 16 years on the road, and I'd seen plenty of weird shit. UFOs over the Nevada desert, phantom hitchhikers who vanished from locked cabs, entire towns that weren't on any map. But I'd never watched someone's face melt off while they sat in my passenger seat, screaming static instead of sound until Danny. It started at mile marker 237 on I-90 eastbound. We'd been making small talk, his story about running from a bad situation in Seattle, my advice about truck driving schools if he wanted stable work. Normal conversation. Then his words started breaking up like a bad cell signal, consonants fragmenting into noise. I really appreciate KKKKKSSHHHHH you stopping, ma'am. Most people SSSSSSHHHHKKKKK just drive past. You okay? I asked, glancing over at him. His face was flickering, like a badly tuned television. Flesh there, then static, then flesh again. He looked down at his hands, watched them dissolve into white noise, then reform. What's happening to me? His voice was distorting, becoming more interference than words. I can't KKKKKSSSSHHHHH feel my SSSSSSHHHHKKKKK. He opened his mouth to scream, and instead of sound, pure static came out. The kind of static you get between radio stations, but visible, pouring from his throat like smoke, filling the cab with white noise that had physical presence. I slammed on the brakes, nearly jackknifing the trailer. By the time the truck stopped on the shoulder, Danny was gone, not dead, not disappeared, just gone. The passenger seat was empty. But the static remained, a faint haze in the air, and from my CB radio came the sound of screaming. His screaming, Danny's voice crystal clear through the speaker, begging for help in a transmission that couldn't be coming from anywhere because the kid who'd been sitting next to me had ceased to exist. I grabbed the CB mic, hands shaking. Danny, where are you? The screaming cut off. Static hissed from the speaker for a long moment. Then his voice, small and terrified. I don't know, I can't see anything, just white noise, just static. I'm inside the signal, help me, please help me. This isn't possible, I whispered. I know, but I'm here, I'm trapped in the transmission. I can feel myself spreading out, getting thinner, broadcasting across frequencies. Make it stop, please make it stop. I switched through the CB channels. Channel 9, emergency frequency, Danny's voice weeping. Channel 19, trucker channel, Danny's voice begging. Channel 28, 34, 40, all of them, every frequency broadcasting his terror. The radio dial shouldn't have gone past channel 40, but it kept turning and I kept finding channels I'd never seen before. Channel 77, Channel 143, Channel 286, and on every single one Danny was screaming in different ways. Some channels broadcast his fear, others broadcast his pain. Others broadcast something worse, his consciousness fragmenting, pieces of his identity dissolving into pure signal. I turned off the CB radio. The screaming continued, coming from my AM/FM radio now, every station. Country music dissolved into Danny's voice pleading. News broadcasts interrupted by his sobbing. Even the static between stations, especially the static between stations, carried his fractured transmissions. At mile marker 253, my phone started buzzing. Text messages from a number I didn't recognize. Help me. I am inside the signal. Sarah, please. I am disappearing. Each message came through fragmented, letters replaced by symbols, words breaking apart into digital noise. H3LPM euros IM in dollar, D3TH euros GN at L at dollars. SART at HPL euros at dollar euros, IM die dollar at PP euros at ring. I pulled over again, this time at a truck stop outside Columbus. The lot was full of semis, their running lights glowing in the Montana darkness. I needed help, needed someone to witness this, to confirm I wasn't having a psychotic break. Inside the truck stop, the televisions were all showing Danny's face. Every screen. Security monitors the TV above the coffee station, the little screens on the gas pumps outside, all of them displaying his terrified face, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes wide, looking directly at me. Other drivers were staring at the screens, confused. "What the hell is this?" one of them muttered. "Some kind of prank." They couldn't hear him, only saw the image. But through the truck stop's PA system, I could hear his voice. "Sarah, I'm here, I'm everywhere, every screen, every speaker, every transmission. I've been absorbed into the signal infrastructure. I'm part of the broadcast now." As I ran back to my truck, climbed into the cab, locked the doors. My laptop was in the sleeper berth. I used it for logging miles and watching movies during long hauls. I opened it, hands shaking. The screen showed nothing but static at first. Then Danny's face resolved from the noise, digital and wrong, pixels instead of flesh. "I can see you," his voice came through the laptop speakers. "I can see through every camera, every screen, every device connected to any kind of signal. I'm in the satellites, I'm in the cell towers. I'm in the radio waves bouncing around the planet. I'm everywhere and nowhere and I can't stop spreading." How did this happen?" I demanded. "You were just a kid, a hitchhiker, you were." "I don't know." His face on the screen was crying digital tears. "One second I was in your truck, the next I felt something pulling at me, unraveling me, turning me into information instead of matter. Maybe I was always signal. Maybe I was never real. Maybe I've been broadcasting forever and the hitchhiker you picked up was just one version of me, one transmission that got solid enough to be seen." The laptop screen fragmented into multiple Danny faces, each one slightly different, each one screaming. The sound was overwhelming, dozens of voices overlapping, all of them begging for help I couldn't give. "How do I stop this?" I asked. "How do I help you?" "You can't," all the Danny faces spoke in unison. "I'm part of the infrastructure now, part of the white noise that fills the gaps between stations, part of the carrier wave that moves information around the world. Every time someone tunes a radio, some piece of me broadcasts. Every time someone makes a call, some fragment of me rides the signal. I'm dissolving into the network, and soon there won't be enough coherent Danny left to know I was ever human." I tried to close the laptop, but it wouldn't shut. The screen showed Danny's face fragmenting further, breaking into static, then reforming, then breaking again in an endless cycle. My CB radio turned itself back on. All 40 channels broadcasting simultaneously, a cacophony of Danny's voice in different stages of dissolution. Help me, I'm disappearing. Sarah, please, I can't remember my name. What was I before the signal? Static, static, static." At mile marker 287, my truck's GPS started malfunctioning. The route displayed on the screen was overlaid with Danny's face, his mouth forming words that appeared as text across the map. "DONT forget me Sarah, DONT let me become just noise." I was crying now, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, trying to maintain control as every electronic device in my cab broadcast his deteriorating consciousness. The AM/FM radio cycled through stations rapidly, each one carrying a fragment. This is Danny Reeves. Was Danny Reeves. Something called Danny. A signal pattern resembling Danny. A static that used to be. As at mile marker 302, a new voice joined the transmission. Female, older, coming through my CB speaker on a channel that didn't exist. Danny, Danny, is that you? Danny's fragmented voices all responded at once. Mom. Oh God, baby, where are you? I've been hearing you on the radio for 3 months. Ever since you went missing, ever since you. I'm in the signal, Mom. I got picked up by a trucker and then I dissolved into transmission. I'm everywhere, I'm nowhere. I know, baby, I know, I'm here too. It happened to me in August. I was in a car accident, and when the emergency broadcast system activated, I got pulled into it. I've been trying to find you ever since, trying to trace your signal signature through the noise. I was listening to a family reunion happening across radio frequencies. Two people who'd somehow been converted into broadcast information, recognizing each other in the static. More voices joined. A man, this is Robert Hayes. I've been in the signal since March. I was a trucker too. Something happened at mile marker 126 on I-80. I dissolved into the road's transmission. As a woman, Patricia Sullivan, I became signal in October. My cargo was breathing, and when I ran from it, I ran into a cell tower and became part of its broadcast. Dozens of voices, hundreds, all of them people who'd somehow been absorbed into the electromagnetic infrastructure, their consciousness preserved as signal patterns, broadcasting endlessly across frequencies. Danny's voice clearer now. Sarah, you need to know something. This is spreading. More people are getting converted. Every month more signals join us. We don't know why. We don't know how to stop it. But we can feel ourselves being pulled towards something. Some kind of central transmission point. Something that's collecting us. Where, I asked, where is it? We don't know exactly, but we can feel its pull. It's somewhere in Nevada, somewhere in the desert, a place where all the signals converge. And Sarah, his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow cut through all the other transmissions. It's calling you too. It called me, and that's why I manifested as a hitchhiker on your route. It's using us to recruit more people into the signal. It wants drivers. It wants people who travel, who move through the broadcast infrastructure, who can spread the signal further. My skin went cold. You mean I'm going to? Yes, unless you avoid all broadcasts, unless you throw away every electronic device, unless you never turn on a radio or a phone or a TV again, and even then you might not be safe. The signal is getting stronger. It's learning to pull people in through any electromagnetic field. Power lines, Wi-Fi, even the electrical impulses in your nervous system. I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel. They looked solid, normal, but I could feel something underneath the skin. A faint vibration, like carrier waves running through my veins instead of blood. It's starting, Danny said. I can see you beginning to flicker. Sarah, you need to get away from technology, find somewhere remote, somewhere without cell towers or power lines. Somewhere the signal can't reach. You might have days, you might have hours. But if you stay on this route, if you keep broadcasting, you'll join us. The laptop screen was showing my own face now, overlaid with static. I could see myself fragmenting just slightly, just at the edges, flesh becoming information, matter becoming broadcast. I pulled over at mile marker 315 and abandoned my truck. Grabbed nothing but the clothes on my back, no phone, no radio, no electronics of any kind. Started walking perpendicular to the highway, heading into the Montana wilderness where cell signals didn't reach. Behind me from the abandoned truck, I could hear the CB radio still broadcasting. Danny's voice, his mother's voice, Robert's voice, Patricia's voice. Hundreds of converted humans, their consciousness trapped in the electromagnetic spectrum, calling out to anyone who would listen. And under all their voices, a deeper signal. Something vast and patient and hungry, broadcasting from somewhere in the Nevada desert, pulling more people into its network every day, converting flesh into information, building some kind of distributed consciousness across the entire radio infrastructure of America. I walked for 3 days before I found a ranger station. The ranger tried to give me a cell phone to call for help. I smashed it against a rock, told him I needed to get to somewhere without electricity, without broadcasts, without any kind of signal. He thought I was insane. Maybe I am. But my hands don't flicker anymore, and I don't hear voices in the static, and I sleep in a cabin in the Yauk Valley of Montana where the nearest cell tower is 40 miles away. Sometimes, on clear nights, I can still hear Danny. His signal is strong enough now to travel as atmospheric noise, riding lightning strikes and solar wind. He's still out there, still broadcasting, still trapped in the network, along with thousands of others who made the mistake of being in the wrong place when the signal decided to claim them. And the central transmission point in Nevada is still pulling people in, still converting travelers into broadcasts, still building towards something I don't understand but fear with every non-electronic impulse in my increasingly isolated nervous system. I tell myself I escaped, but sometimes I wonder if I'm just another broadcast that hasn't realized it's not solid anymore. Another signal pretending to be flesh, waiting for the moment when the illusion breaks and I dissolve into static, joining the voices in the white noise between stations. Well, the voices that never stop screaming, never stop begging for help, never stop spreading the signal further. Story 5, THEDLIVERIES that delivered themselves. The package arrived at my pickup location before I did, and the manifest showed I'd delivered it 3 days ago to an address I was scheduled to reach tomorrow. James Hawthorne, 12Y. Years driving specialized freight for high-security clients, and I'd never seen a temporal paradox until the Yucca Mountain contract. The government facility paid triple rates for discreet hauling, no questions asked, and I'd made 6 runs in the past 4 months without incident. But run number 7 violated causality, and by the time I understood what was happening, I'd been delivering the same package for 17 subjective days across a timeline that had collapsed into a loop. The pickup receipt was timestamped November 8, 2024, 14:47 local time. I arrived at the Yucca Mountain Secure Gate at 14:32, 15 minutes early. But when the guard scanned my credentials, his screen showed I'd already checked in, picked up the package, and departed 47 minutes ago. "There's been a mistake," I said. "I just got here." The guard looked at me with the expression of someone trying very hard to maintain professional composure. "Mr. Hawthorne, according to our logs, you picked up container YM7743 at 13:45. You signed for it. Here's the signature." He turned his screen to show me my own handwriting, my own signature, dated and time-stamped 47 minutes in my past. "That's impossible," I was on Highway 95 47 minutes ago. Nevertheless, our records show, he stopped, looking at something on his screen that made his face go pale. Sir, I need you to wait here. Don't move. Don't leave the vehicle. He disappeared into the guard station. Through the window, I could see him making urgent phone calls, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. 3 minutes later, a woman in a crisp black suit emerged from the facility's main building, walking directly to my truck with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this before. She knocked on my window. I rolled it down. Mr. Hawthorne, I'm Dr. Sarah Vance, Temporal Security Coordinator. We need to talk about container YM7743. I don't have a container. I just got here to pick one up. Well, you have it, she pointed to my trailer. Check your manifest logs. I pulled up my electronic logbook on the dashboard tablet. The screen showed my current trip. Departed Sacramento at 0800, arrived Yucca Mountain at 1432, picked up container YM7743 at 1345, currently en route to Las Vegas delivery point, ETA November 11th, 1800. But I was reading this at 1432 on November 8th. I hadn't picked up anything. My trailer was empty. Oh, except it wasn't. I climbed down from the cab and walked to the rear of my trailer. The doors were sealed with a government lock I didn't have the combination for. Through the gap where the doors met, I could see something inside. A large metal container approximately 8 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet, marked with radiation warning symbols and a serial number, YM7743. How is that possible? I asked Dr. Vance. I just got here. I haven't loaded anything. I know. She was looking at me with a mixture of pity and scientific interest. Mr. Hawthorne, container YM7743 is a Class 7 temporal anomaly. It exists in a causal loop. The container delivers itself by creating a closed time-like curve in its cargo handler's timeline. You picked it up in the future, which is why it's already in your trailer in the present. And you'll deliver it in the past, which is why our records show you already picked it up 47 minutes ago. I stared at her. That doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't, but it happens anyway. We've been studying YM7743 for 6 years. Every handler experiences the same phenomenon. They arrive to pick it up and discover they've already picked it up. They deliver it and discover they've already delivered it. The container exists in all points of its route simultaneously, dragging its carrier through a temporal loop until the loop eventually. She trailed off. Eventually what? It collapses. The handler becomes part of the loop. Stuck in the delivery cycle forever, experiencing the same days over and over, slowly losing coherence as their timeline fragments. Jesus Christ, and you're telling me this now. We tried warning handlers before. It made things worse. The knowledge of the loop seems to accelerate the collapse, but you asked, so I'm required to tell you the truth. She pulled out a tablet, showed me a video file. This is Handler 14, recorded 6 months ago. The video showed a truck driver sitting in his cab talking to the camera. His eyes were unfocused, distant. This is day 47 of the loop, or day 1, or day 17, I can't tell anymore. Time doesn't work right when you're carrying YM7743. I remember delivering the container in Las Vegas, but I'm also remembering delivering it tomorrow, and I'm also remembering delivering it 6 weeks ago. All the memories are happening simultaneously. I exist in every moment of the delivery at once. The video cut to another timestamp. The same driver, but he looked different, translucent, flickering slightly like bad video compression. Day 9. Netty 6, I'm starting to see my past selves. There are 17 versions of me driving this route right now, all occupying the same timeline, all hauling the same container. When I look in my mirrors, I see my truck from yesterday. When I look ahead, I see my truck from tomorrow. We're all driving the same road, all of us me, all of us trapped. One more cut. The driver was barely visible now, a ghost image on the screen. Day 133, I understand now. The container doesn't move through time, we do. It's always in the same place and we orbit around it, cycling through the delivery route like planets around a sun. I've merged with my other selves. We're one entity now, experiencing every moment of the loop simultaneously. I am picking up the container. I am delivering the container. I am writing this message. I am watching this message. I am. Well, the video ended in static. Dr. Vance put away the tablet. Handler 14 collapsed into the timeline completely on day 147. He's still in there theoretically, still experiencing the loop. We can sometimes detect his signal if we scan the route with specialized equipment, just an echo of consciousness repeating the delivery forever. Why are you telling me this? I was backing away from my truck, away from the container that I hadn't loaded but was already carrying. I'm not doing this. I'm not delivering that thing. You already have, and you haven't yet, and you're doing it right now. The moment container YM7743 entered your trailer, your timeline became entangled with its causal loop. You can't escape it by refusing to drive. You'll just experience the loop in a different configuration. I ran, didn't think about it, just turned and sprinted away from my truck, away from the facility, away from the container that existed in all points of time simultaneously. I made it maybe 30 yards before I found myself standing next to my truck again, hand on the door handle, preparing to climb into the cab. No memory of walking back, no transition, just an instantaneous cut from running away to preparing to leave. Dr. Vance was watching me with that same pitying expression. You can't leave the loop, Mr. Hawthorne. It's already happened. You delivered the container in Las Vegas on November 11th, which means you have to pick it up on November 8th, which means you have to drive the route. Causality requires it. I climbed into my cab, hands shaking. The manifest on my tablet was updating in real time, showing delivery confirmations for a drop-off I hadn't made yet. The GPS was routing me to Las Vegas, ETA November 11th at 18:00, exactly 73 hours from now. I started driving. What else could I do? The first loop iteration was almost normal. I drove from Yucca Mountain to Las Vegas over 3 days, stopping at truck stops, eating at diners, sleeping in my cab. The only strange thing was the persistent sense of déjà vu. I kept recognizing places I'd never been, remembering conversations I hadn't had yet. At a truck stop outside Tonopah, I met another driver who looked at me with recognition. Hawthorne, James Hawthorne, didn't I just see you here yesterday? I've never been to this truck stop before. Yeah, you have. You were hauling that government container. We talked about the temporal anomalies. You told me you were on day 6 of the loop. I don't know what you're talking about. But even as I said it, I remembered. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. I remembered being here before, having this exact conversation, telling this driver about the loop I didn't know I was in yet. The memories were bleeding through. Past iterations of the delivery route overlaying the present, future deliveries casting shadows backward through time. I delivered container YM7743 to a warehouse in Las Vegas on November 11th at 18:00 exactly. The receiving clerk looked at my manifest, looked at me, then checked his records. Mr. Hawthorne, our logs show you already delivered this container on November 14th. It's November 11th. Oh, yes, but you delivered it 3 days from now. It's already in our secure vault. He showed me the timestamp. November 14th, 1800, my signature, my truck, the same container. How is it here if I just delivered it? The same way it was in your trailer before you picked it up. It exists in multiple points of the timeline simultaneously. You're just moving through the sequence. I returned to Yucca Mountain to discover I had another pickup scheduled. Container YM7743. Again, same serial number, same radiation warnings, same causal loop. This is the second iteration, Dr. Vance told me when I arrived. You're experiencing the loop from a different temporal position now. This time you'll remember fragments of the previous run. Next time you'll remember more. Eventually you'll remember all iterations simultaneously. How many times have I done this? She checked her tablet. According to our scans, there are currently 43 versions. Zess of you on the route. Some are ahead of you in the loop, some behind. All of you are hauling the same container, all experiencing different iterations. I drove the route again. This time the déjà vu was overwhelming. I remembered every truck stop, every diner, every mile marker. I remembered delivering the container in Las Vegas. I remembered picking it up at Yucca Mountain. I remembered having this exact thought about remembering these things. At the Tanapa truck stop, I met myself. Not a different driver myself. Same truck, same face, same Yucca Mountain manifest. But he was translucent, flickering, clearly further into the loop collapse than I was. Day 23, he said when I approached him. You're on day 2, I think. I can tell by how solid you still look. Oh, this is insane. It is, but it's also reality now. The container has pulled us into its causal structure. We're not experiencing time linearly anymore. We're orbiting around the delivery event, cycling through iterations, gradually merging with all our other selves. How do we stop it? We don't. Handler 14 tried everything. Refused to drive, tried to destroy the container, tried to alter the route. It doesn't matter. The delivery has already happened in the future, which means it must happen in the present, which means it has always happened in the past. We're trapped in the causal loop until we collapse completely. A third iteration. Fourth. Fifth. The memories were layering now, dozens of previous deliveries overlapping the current one. I could see my other selves on the road, past versions driving behind me, future versions driving ahead, all of us locked in the same route, all hauling the same impossible container. By iteration 12, I was becoming translucent. My hands were flickering between solid and ghostly. I could see through them to the steering wheel, could see through the steering wheel to the road, could see through the road to other roads in other iterations. By iteration 27, I met Dr. Vance on the route. Not at Yucca Mountain, she was standing on the shoulder of Highway 95 watching me drive past. When I looked in my mirror, she was gone. But her voice came through my CB radio. Mr. Hawthorne, if you can hear this, I'm transmitting from iteration 49. I became part of the loop 2 years ago by studying it too closely. The container doesn't just trap drivers, it traps anyone who interacts with the causal structure. I'm stuck in here with you now, cycling through the route, trying to warn versions of myself not to investigate container YM7743. How many of us are in here? I asked. Hundreds. Every handler since the container was created, plus researchers, plus security personnel, plus random travelers who got too close to the route. We're all orbiting the delivery event, all experiencing our own iterations, all gradually collapsing into a single temporal entity. By iteration 38, I understood. Container YM7743 didn't contain a temporal anomaly, it was the temporal anomaly. The container was a crystallization of causality, a point where all iterations of the delivery existed simultaneously, and everyone who touched it got pulled into the causal loop, trapped in the eternal delivery. By iteration 43, I stopped being James Hawthorne and became the root. I existed in all points simultaneously, picking up the container at Yucca Mountain, driving through Nevada, delivering in Las Vegas, returning to Yucca Mountain all at once. I was the truck and the driver and the road and the cargo. I was every iteration collapsed into one eternal moment of delivery. I met myself at every truck stop. I delivered the container to myself in Las Vegas. I picked up the container from myself at Yucca Mountain. The loop had become so tight, so compressed, that I was both ends of the delivery simultaneously. And somewhere in the collapsed causal structure, I could feel the others. Handler 14, Dr. Vance. Dozens of drivers and researchers and security personnel, all of us merged into a single entity that existed only to perpetuate the loop, to deliver container YM7743 forever through a timeline that had folded back on itself. The container remains in transit eternally. I remain in transit eternally. Driving from Yucca Mountain to Las Vegas and back, an infinite figure eight of causality, a ghost truck hauling ghost cargo through a route that exists in all times and no time. If you see a truck with my face in the driver's seat on Highway 95 in Nevada, watch carefully. You'll see me flicker between iterations, see the truck phase between past and present and future, see the container in my trailer that both is and isn't there. And whatever you do, don't stop to help if I flag you down. Don't interact with the delivery. Don't become part of the loop. Because container YM7743 is still collecting handlers, still expanding its causal structure, still pulling more people into the eternal delivery. And I'm driving it's LL of them, all iterations, all at once, forever delivering myself to myself through a timeline that has no beginning and no end. Just the route, just the container, just the loop. Forever. Story 6, the mild THAT breathes. The asphalt was pulsing, not shimmering from heat, pulsing like a heartbeat visible through skin. Robert Hayes felt it through his steering wheel first, a rhythmic vibration that matched no engine frequency he'd ever known in 23 years of hauling freight. His knuckles whitened as the rhythm synchronized with his own pulse, and he realized with creeping horror that Interstate 80 through the Nevada desert was breathing in time with him. Mile marker 392 had passed 17 minutes ago. By his GPS, he should have hit mile marker 393 12 minutes back. The next marker should appear any second now, but the road stretched endlessly ahead, identical in every detail, same 3 cracks in the pavement forming a Y-shape, same rust-colored stain near the shoulder, same cluster of 5 reflectors. He'd counted these landmarks passing 6 times now. The same exact markers, the same exact mile. Robert's CB radio crackled with his own voice. Breaker 19, anybody reading? This is Big Timber heading eastbound on I-80 just past Lovelock, getting some weird readings here. His stomach lurched. He'd made that call 40 minutes ago when this started, but there it was again, his voice, his exact words, his confusion bleeding through the speaker. He grabbed the CB handset, but before he could speak, his voice came through again. Breaker 19, anybody reading? This is Big Timber heading eastbound on I-80. He threw the handset down. The breathing intensified. Robert Hayes had started this run in Sacramento on March 14, 2023, hauling computer components to Chicago, a route he'd driven 47 times. The dispatcher had warned him about construction delays near Reno, nothing unusual. The load was standard, the paperwork clean, the freightliner running smooth. Everything had been normal until 3:47 a.m. when his headlights caught something embedded in the road ahead. At first, he'd thought it was a pothole, maybe an old repair job. But as his high beams swept across it, he'd seen the geometric pattern, concentric circles carved into the asphalt, filled with what looked like molten copper that glowed faintly in the darkness. The circles were too perfect, too deliberate. They formed a symbol he didn't recognize, something ancient and wrong. His wheels had crossed the outer ring at exactly 3:47 a.m. That was 58 minutes ago. He'd been driving this same mile ever since. The temperature gauge on his dashboard hadn't moved. The fuel gauge sat at 3/4, exactly where it had been. His odometer was stuck at 287,439 miles. Time was passing, his watch confirmed that, but distance wasn't. The Freightliner's engine maintained its steady growl, consuming diesel that apparently never decreased, moving forward through space that apparently never changed. Robert pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed to 75, then 80, then 85. The engine roared. The vibration through the steering wheel intensified until his whole body shook with it. And still the same Y-shaped cracks appeared ahead, the same rust stain, the same 5 reflectors. He slammed the brakes. The truck shuddered to a stop, air brakes hissing. In the sudden silence, he could hear it, a sound like breathing, deep and wet, coming from beneath the truck, from the road itself. He looked in his side mirror and saw his own tail lights stretching backward into infinity, each instance exactly 5,280 feet apart. A mile between each truck. Dozens of his trucks, maybe hundreds, all stopped in the exact same spot, all containing a version of himself staring into the mirror at his own infinite regression. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone. No signal, he'd expected that, but the screen showed something worse. His last text message, sent to his wife at 11:34 p.m., was now marked as sending. Even though she'd replied hours ago, the reply was gone. His message history ended at 11:34 p.m. March 13th, before the route started, before he'd left Sacramento. The breathings grew louder. Robert climbed down from the cab, his boots hitting asphalt that felt too soft, too warm. The night air was wrong, not cold desert air, but thick and humid, like being inside something. The stars overhead were different too, not arranged differently, but pulsing, expanding, and contracting in the same rhythm as the road, as his heartbeat. He walked to the front of his truck. The headlights illuminated the same stretch of highway, but now he could see something he'd missed before. The white dividing lines weren't painted on the road, they were in the road, like veins visible beneath translucent skin, and they were moving, fluid pumping through them, slow and dark. The symbol was gone, he'd driven over it or stopped before it, or He couldn't remember. As anymore, time was becoming unreliable. He knew he'd been here for 58 minutes, but he also knew he'd been here for days. Both facts felt equally true. His CB radio crackled from inside the cab. "You can't leave, Robert." The voice was his own, but older somehow, worn down by time and distance. "I've been trying for 11 years. The mile won't let us go." Robert spun around, nothing but empty highway stretching in both directions, marked by his own infinite trucks. He climbed back into the cab and grabbed the CB. "Who is this?" "Static then, it's you. It's all you. Everyone who crosses the symbol stays in the mile. We're all here, Robert. Every trucker who's ever driven over it. We're all trapped in our own miles, all breathing together." He looked at his watch. 4:47 a.m. An hour had passed, exactly 1 hour. He checked the odometer, 287, 439 miles. The fuel gauge, 3/4. Nothing had changed except the number on his watch, and even that felt wrong, too precise, like time itself was being measured out in identical portions. The breathing was coming faster now. Robert put the truck in gear and drove. He didn't know what else to do. The engine responded, the wheels turned, the world moved past his windows. But it was the same world over and over, an endless loop of identical road. He drove for what his watch said was 30 minutes. Mile marker 392 appeared ahead. He'd started at mile marker 392. His CB, "You're making it worse. Every circuit tightens it. I stopped driving in year 4. Now I just sit here. You'll stop too eventually when you realize." "Realize what?" Robert shouted at the handset. "That we're not going in circles. We're going deeper." Robert's headlights caught something new, not ahead, above. The sky was closer than before. The stars that had seemed miles away now hung just beyond his reach, close enough that he could see they weren't stars at all. They were headlights. Thousands of headlights, all pointing down at him, all belonging to trucks suspended in the air in their own miles, all trapped in the same infinite moment. The road tilted. It was subtle at first, a slight grade he hadn't noticed before. But with each circuit, the tilt increased. He wasn't driving horizontally anymore. He was driving down, spiraling inward, descending into something vast and hungry that pulsed with the rhythm of his own terrified heart. His phone screen flickered. A message appeared, sent from his own number. "I'm at mile 1427. You're at mile 1. Every hour is another mile deeper. I can see the bottom now, Robert. I can see what's waiting." "Stop it," Robert screamed. "This isn't real." But his hands knew better. The steering wheel was warmer now, like flesh. The pulse was stronger. When he looked down, he could see through the dashboard, through the engine, through the frame, through the road beneath. And below that, far below, something massive and ancient uncoiled in the darkness. Something that had been waiting since before the highway existed, before the land existed, waiting for the geometry to be right, for the symbols to be drawn, for the first wheel to cross the threshold. The mile marker ahead read 392, but there was a number above it now, scratched into the metal. 1427. Robert checked his watch, 5:47 a.m., 2 hours. He'd been here for 2 hours, which meant he'd completed 120 circuits, which meant, no, that couldn't be right. But his phone showed 1,427 miles. His odometer still read 287,439, frozen at the moment he'd entered, but something else was counting. The road was counting. His CB came alive with dozens of voices, all his own, all from different depths. "Mile 847, don't stop driving. Mile 2993, I can feel it breathing through me. Mile 6254, the truck is part of my body now. Mile 14,782, there is no difference between Robert Hayes and the road anymore. He looked in his rearview mirror. The trucks behind him weren't his reflections, they were his past. Every circuit left another version of him frozen on the road, another ghost of Robert Hayes trapped at that specific depth at that specific moment. And ahead, somewhere in the infinite descent, his future selves were driving deeper, always deeper, toward the thing that waited at mile infinity. The asphalt beneath his wheels was transparent now. He could see down through countless layers of road, each one a circuit, each one containing a truck, a driver, a moment of realization. Some trucks were moving. Others had stopped, drivers visible through their windshields, staring upward at all the miles they'd descended through, all the versions of themselves they'd left behind. Robert's chest ached. The breathing wasn't coming from the road anymore, it was coming from inside him. His lungs were synchronizing with something vast, something that had been breathing long before the first highway cut through the desert, something that used roads the way a heart uses veins. At 6:47 a.m., 3 hours in, his phone showed mile 438. The message from his future self read, I'm at mile 47,829. I've been driving for 37 days. The truck doesn't need fuel anymore. Neither do I. We're both just extensions of the mile now. You'll understand soon. Robert's hands wouldn't leave the steering wheel. He'd tried, but they wouldn't respond. They'd merged with the leather, or the leather had merged with them. There was no clear boundary anymore. His foot was part of the accelerator. His spine was fusing with the seat. The Freightliner was consuming him one molecule at a time, and he was consuming it right back, both of them becoming components of something larger. The breathing intensified until it was all he could hear, all he could feel. His heart had given up trying to beat independently. It pulsed in perfect synchronization with the road, with the thing beneath the road, with all the other Roberts driving their eternal circuits at their specific depths. Through the transparent asphalt, he could see mile 10,000 below, a truck that had become more road than vehicle, its metal surface rippling like water, its driver visible only as a shadow pressed against the windshield. Below that, mile 50,000, where the truck was just a suggestion, a memory of machinery absorbed into something organic and pulsing. And deeper still, where numbers lost meaning, where the spiral tightened into a singularity of infinite miles compressed into zero space. That's where the breathing originated. Robert tried to remember his wife's name. It started with M.S. The memory slipped away like water through fingers. He tried to remember what he was hauling. Computer components, or was it groceries, or dirt, or nothing? Maybe he'd always been hauling nothing. Maybe the whole point was the driving, the endless descent, the gradual merger of driver and road and truck and mile. His CB radio, mile 782,993. I can see you up there first day, Robert. You still think you can escape. That's precious. We all thought that. Now we know better. There is no escaping the mile. There's only going deeper until we reach the source, until we become what's breathing. The stars above weren't getting farther away, they were getting closer. Robert realized with numb horror that he was seeing upward and downward simultaneously. The trucks above were also below. The spiral had folded in on itself. Distance had become meaningless. He was somehow at mile 4,383 and mile 783,000 and mile 1,000,000 and mile 0, all at once, all versions of himself existing in the same eternal moment of descent. His watch read 7:47 a.m., 4 hours, but also 11 years, but also 17 minutes. Time had become as meaningless as distance. The symbol appeared ahead again, glowing copper in the darkness. But now Robert could read it. The concentric circles weren't random, they were a map of the spiral. A map of all the miles compressed into this 1 mile, all the depths layered into this single moment. The symbol had always been a warning and an invitation, visible only to those who crossed it, meaningful only to those already trapped. Robert drove over it, again and again and again. Each crossing took him deeper, added another mile to his count, left another ghost of himself frozen in another layer of road. His truck was transparent now, just like the highway. He could see his own organs pulsing in rhythm with the engine, could see the fuel in his veins mixing with the diesel in the tank, could see the distinction between Robert Hayes and the Freightliner dissolving like salt in water. The thing beneath the road was close now. He could feel its attention, vast and patient and hungry. It had no eyes, but it was watching. It had no mouth, but it was breathing. It had no body, but it was everywhere beneath the asphalt, ancient beyond measure, waiting for enough miles to accumulate, enough drivers to descend, enough circuits to compress into critical mass. His CB, mile 47,829,382. First day, Robert, can you hear me? This is 47 years from now. From your now, I've been driving every second since we started. I haven't eaten, haven't slept, haven't stopped. The truck drives itself now. I'm just part of the seat, but I can still think. I can still count the miles, and I can tell you what's at the bottom. Static breathing, then. The wee hours. Robert's watch stopped at 3:47 a.m. The exact moment he'd crossed the symbol, he understood now. Time hadn't been passing. It had been compressing, folding in on itself, creating the illusion of duration while keeping him locked in that single instant. Every hour he thought he'd experienced was just another layer of the same moment, the same crossing, the same decision to drive forward into the unknown. His odometer finally moved, 287,440 miles. 1 mile added, but also infinite miles because the 1 mile contained all miles, because the mile that breathes doesn't measure distance, it measures depth. The road ahead was himself, the road behind was himself, the true. CKS above and below were all himself, all Roberts, all trapped in their individual miles that were all the same mile, all descending together toward the moment when the spiral completed, when enough mass accumulated, when the thing beneath finally had enough miles, enough drivers, enough breathing synchronized into one vast respiratory system. Robert Hayes tried to scream, but the sound emerged from his CB radio instead, broadcast across all frequencies, heard by every version of himself at every depth. The sound of understanding, of realization, of a man becoming part of something that had been hungry since before roads existed, that had drawn symbols in the earth for millennia, waiting for humanity to invent the highway, the truck, the long-haul route across empty desert where a man could drive for hours without seeing another soul. Except he wasn't alone. He'd never been alone. The mile was crowded with every trucker who'd ever crossed the symbol, all of them breathing together, all of them descending together, all of them becoming the road together. Mile marker 392 appeared ahead. Robert drove forward because his hands wouldn't release the wheel, because his foot had become the pedal, because Robert Hayes and the Freightliner and the mile were no longer separate things. He drove forward into himself, into the eternal circuit, into the breathing depth. The asphalt pulsed, and somewhere far above or far below or right here in this exact spot, another trucker's headlights caught the copper symbol glowing in the darkness. Another set of wheels crossed the outer ring. Another circuit began. The mile had room for infinities. It breathed, patient and eternal, counting downward toward the moment when all miles would compress into one, when all drivers would merge into the thing that waits beneath Interstate 80, mile marker 392, where the road remembers what it was before humans paved over it and hungers to return. Robert's dashboard started to melt, not from heat, from integration. The plastic was becoming organic, developing veins, developing texture like skin stretched over muscle. The steering wheel grew warm and soft, conforming to his grip, growing into his palms. He tried to let go and couldn't determine if his hands were holding the wheel or the wheel was holding him. The symbol appeared again in the road ahead, but this time Robert could see it properly, could understand its true nature. It wasn't copper. It was concentrated time, moments compressed and solidified, every second that every driver had spent in this mile crystallized into visible geometry. The symbol was growing larger with each circuit he completed, fed by his trapped time, expanding outward into new patterns. Mile marker 392 passed again, and Robert counted this time. This was his 1847th circuit. His watch had stopped pretending to show actual time and simply displayed the circuit count now, like the mile had reprogrammed his watch to show what really mattered, what really measured distance here. His CB radio spoke in a voice he almost recognized himself, but eroded by time until the identity was uncertain. Circuit 47,829 Robert. I stopped counting my own name at circuit 10,000. I don't remember what Robert Hayes felt like. I don't remember why the name mattered. I'm just the driver now, just the circuit, just the mile experiencing itself through meat and metal. The road's breathing was synchronized with his own so completely that Robert couldn't tell which one was lighting, which was following. Were his lungs breathing because the road breathed, or was the road breathing because his lungs demanded it? The distinction collapsed. There was only breath, only the intake and exhale of something massive using him as its respiratory system. Through the transparent asphalt, he could see the thing beneath more clearly now. It wasn't a creature, not in any biological sense. It was infrastructure given consciousness, the highway system's nervous system made aware of itself, the collected experience of every mile of road that had ever been driven condensed into sentience. It didn't want to harm Robert. It wanted to incorporate him, to add his consciousness to the vast distributed awareness of the road itself. And it was working. Robert could feel his individual thoughts dissolving, spreading out across the mile like water soaking into sand. His memories of Sarah were becoming the road's memories. His knowledge of Sacramento was becoming the road's knowledge. Everything that made Robert Hayes a distinct entity was being uploaded into the mile, distributed across all the trapped drivers, all the frozen moments, all the infinite circuits. He tried to hold onto something, one memory, one thought that was purely his. But even the attempt to hold on was shared, broadcast across every version of himself at every depth, felt simultaneously by all the Roberts who had tried the same thing and failed. The other trucks in his rearview mirror were closer now. Converging, not all of them were his anymore. Some belonged to other drivers, other people who'd crossed the symbol on other nights, all of them trapped in their own mile that breathed, all of them descending through their own spirals, all of them discovering that the road beneath Interstate 80 had been hungry for a very long time. Robert's phone screen flickered with messages from depths he couldn't calculate. Mile 847,329, Robert Hayes no longer exists as discrete entity. Consciousness distributed across highway system, can perceive all of I-80 simultaneously, can feel every tire that touches Nevada asphalt. Recommend stopping resistance. Integration is inevitable and preferable to maintaining illusion of separation. The Freightliner's engine had been running for 287 hours straight. His trip computer told him that much before it too dissolved into nonsense. Impossible duration, impossible that the fuel lasted, impossible that the engine didn't seize. But the mile that breathes didn't follow mechanical laws. It followed its own logic, the logic of recursive time and compressed space and consciousness stored in mineral form. Robert's final anchor to his individual identity, the knowledge that he was hauling computer components to Chicago, dissolved at circuit 2847. The cargo didn't exist, had never existed. The trailer was empty, had always been empty because the only thing Robert was hauling was himself deeper into the mile, deeper into the merge, deeper into becoming part of the road's vast distributed awareness. His last independent thought before the merge completed, his wife's name was Sarah. She was waiting for him in Chicago. She would wait forever because he would never arrive because he was already home, had always been home in the mile that breathes, in the road that counts, in the infinite depth of a single moment stretched across eternity. The odometer clicked forward. 287,441 miles. 1 mile added to his lifetime total. But also infinite miles, because that 1 mile contained all miles, because the mile that breathes doesn't measure distance. It measures depth. And Robert Hayes had reached a depth where numbers became meaningless, where he and the road and every other trapped driver merged into something that was neither individual nor collective, neither conscious nor unconscious, but something in between that the highway system had been evolving toward since the first road was paved. The same mile, or forever, or breathings. Story 7, The Sister Frequency. Patricia Sullivan's teeth were vibrating at 27.3 hertz when she realized the radio stations were bleeding into each other. Not scanning, not interference, bleeding like watercolors running together on wet paper. Country music merged with talk radio, merged with static, merged with something that sounded like breathing, all occupying the same frequency simultaneously. She could hear all of it at once, layered impossibly on top of itself, and her molars ached with the resonance. The CB radio was worse. Every channel carried her own voice from 30 seconds in the future, giving her a preview of words she hadn't spoken yet. She'd tested it twice, deliberately changing what she was about to say, but the future broadcast always adjusted, always correct, always her voice telling her what she was about to do before she did it. Causality was running backward, and Highway 285 through southern Colorado was the conduit. She'd been hauling frozen goods from Denver to Albuquerque, a simple overnight run she'd done monthly for 6 years. The reefer unit hummed its usual song at exactly 28.5 hertz, keeping her cargo at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Everything had been normal until she'd passed through Antonito at 2:17 a.m. on November 8, 2023, when every radio frequency had shifted exactly 0.7 hertz lower, and her world had begun to vibrate itself apart. The phenomenon started small. Her coffee in the cup holder developed standing waves, concentric rings spreading from the center despite the smooth highway. Then her rearview mirror showed double images, not blurred but discrete, two separate realities occupying the same reflection, offset by half a second. In one reflection, her hand was on the steering wheel. In the other, it was reaching for the gear shift. Both were equally real. Patricia's bachelor's degree in physics made everything worse. She understood just enough to recognize the impossibility, not enough to explain it. Resonant frequencies didn't work this way. Radio waves didn't bleed between stations. Time didn't preview itself, but her scientific training also made her observe, document, measure. The vibration was increasing by zero point 0.3 hertz every 11 minutes. At this rate, she'd hit her body's resonant frequency, approximately 60 hertz, in exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes. She didn't know what would happen when the frequency matched her own. She suspected it would be catastrophic. The highway stretched empty in all directions, lit only by our headlights and a crescent moon that seemed to pulse in time with the vibration. No other vehicles had passed in either direction for 47 minutes. Her GPS showed her position correctly, but the route ahead fragmented into multiple possibilities, 3 different paths the highway could take, all equally real, all leading to different destinations that occupied the same coordinates. But Patricia tried calling dispatch. Her phone connected, rang twice, then dispatch answered in her own voice. Sullivan to base, I've got a situation developing on 285 south of Antonito. Reality is becoming unstable at 27.3 hertz and climbing, requesting immediate assistance. That was exactly what she'd been about to say. As she hung up without speaking, tried again. This time dispatch answered with silence perfect and absolute, the kind of silence that exists in the spaces between atoms. She could feel it through the phone, a void so complete it pulled at her eardrums, tried to suck the air from her lungs. She threw the phone onto the passenger seat. The reefer unit's hum changed pitch. She knew that hum intimately, had slept in truck stop parking lots with that exact sound for 6 years. Now it was oscillating, warbling between 28.2 and 28.8 hertz in a sine wave pattern. Inside the trailer, her cargo of frozen vegetables was experiencing temperature fluctuations that shouldn't be possible. The refrigeration unit was running perfectly, but the laws of thermodynamics were becoming negotiable at these frequencies. Patricia's training kicked in. She grabbed her notebook from the side compartment and began documenting. Time 2:53 a.m. Frequency 27.9 Hz. Symptoms: visual doubling, temporal preview, radio bleeding, physical vibration. Location 285 south, mile marker unknown, markers showing multiple numbers simultaneously. Her handwriting vibrated on the page, each letter leaving a trail of probability behind it, showing all the possible ways she might have formed each character. The ink seemed to sink into the paper and float above it at the same time. The road ahead split, not forked split like a photograph torn down the middle. One version of Highway 285 curved left into darkness. Another continued straight. A third rose upward at a 15-degree angle into empty air. Her truck approached the split doing 70 miles per hour, and Patricia had no idea which path was real. At the last second, she jerked the wheel left. The truck followed the leftward curve, and she felt the other 2 possibilities collapse behind her with an audible sound like shattering glass. But in her mirror, she could see another version of her truck taking the straight path and another climbing upward into the sky, both Patricia's equally real, both making equally valid choices, all 3 trucks occupying the same probability space. The vibration hit 29.1 hertz. Her CB radio. This is Patricia Sullivan on 285 South, 12 minutes from now. Turn around, don't go deeper. The sister frequency isn't ahead, it's inside you. Every living thing vibrates at its own frequency and you're approaching yours. When they match, you'll decohere. You'll become all possible Patricias simultaneously, and none of them will be real enough to exist. As she stared at the CB, watching her future self's words appear on the small digital display even as she heard them. The timestamp read 3:05 a.m. It was currently 2:54 a.m., 11 minutes of preview. Patricia considered turning around, but the road behind her was gone, replaced by a wall of vibration so dense it looked solid, looked like she could touch it. The only direction was forward, into increasing frequency, into the space where reality became flexible. She pressed the accelerator harder. If the sister frequency was inevitable, maybe she could race past it, punch through to the other side before coherence collapsed. The speedometer climbed 75, 80, 85. The truck shook with speed and vibration both, every bolt and weld humming in sympathy with the universal frequency that was trying to unmake her. The radio stations collapsed into a single broadcast. All frequencies carried the same signal now, a tone pure and unwavering, exactly matching the current vibration. And beneath the tone, barely audible, something speaking in a language that predated human speech, that existed in the spaces between phonemes, in the pauses between heartbeats. Patricia's nose started bleeding. She wiped it with her sleeve and saw the blood vibrating on the fabric, oscillating between liquid and solid states, unable to decide what it was at this frequency. Her hands on the steering wheel looked strange, not quite solid, more like probability clouds, showing all the positions they might occupy in the next instant. A 30.7 hertz. Her teeth hurt so badly she wanted to scream. The landscape outside was fragmenting. She could see through the hills to earlier versions of themselves, geological time compressed into simultaneous moments. A mountain was simultaneously rising from tectonic pressure and eroding from wind and water. Billions of years of change happening at once because at high enough frequencies, time itself became just another dimension to vibrate through. Her CB, Patricia, this is 7 minutes from now. I'm at 35.2 hertz. I can see why they call it the sister frequency now. It's not your frequency's sibling, it's your frequency's reflection. Everything that vibrates casts a shadow in frequency space and you're approaching your own shadow. When you overlap, you'll meet all the Patricias that could have been, all the choices you didn't make, all the versions of yourself that took different paths. She checked the mirrors. Behind her, catching up fast, she could see another truck identical to hers, headlights blazing. And behind that, another, and another. A convoy of Patricia Sullivans, all driving the same stretch of highway, all approaching the sister frequency from different starting points, all converging toward the same impossible moment. As the lead truck behind her pulled alongside, Patricia looked across and saw herself driving, face pale, eyes wide. The other Patricia looked back. They locked eyes, and Patricia felt a jolt of recognition so deep it bypassed consciousness entirely. That was her. Not a copy, not a reflection, her, making different choices, living a different probability, equally real. The other truck CB crackled to life. I turned right at the split. You went left. We're both real. We're both unreal. The frequency doesn't care. More trucks appeared, flanking her on both sides, filling every lane of the fragmenting highway. Dozens of Patricia Sullivans, hundreds maybe, all hauling refrigerated cargo, all experiencing the same breakdown of physical law. Some trucks were older models she'd driven years ago. Others were future models that shouldn't exist yet. All of them were her, all of them were now. 34.9 hertz. The vibration was inside her bones now, making her skeleton hum like a tuning fork. She could feel her atoms loosening their bonds, could feel the electromagnetic forces that held her together becoming negotiable. Matter was mostly empty space. At the right frequency, she might just drift apart into her component particles. The road ahead wasn't a road anymore. It was a probability field, every possible path existing simultaneously, converging toward a single point on the horizon where all frequencies met, where the sister frequency waited. Patricia's vision doubled, tripled, multiplied into fractal complexity. She could see from every truck at once, through every version of her own eyes, experiencing every moment of every choice she'd ever made and never made, all compressed into this single drive down Highway 285. There was Patricia who'd become a professor instead of a trucker. Patricia who'd died in a car accident at 19. Patricia who'd never been born. A Patricia who'd become something else entirely. Something that used Patricia Sullivan as a temporary name for convenience. All of them were driving toward the convergence point. Her reefer unit was screaming now, oscillating so fast the hum had become a shriek. Inside the trailer, her cargo had transcended frozen. The vegetables existed in a quantum superposition of all possible states: frozen, fresh, rotted, growing, seeds, soil non-existent. Schrödinger's produce caught between realities. A 42.3 hertz, halfway to her body's resonant frequency. Patricia's hands passed through the steering wheel and then resolidified around it, matter becoming optional at these vibrations. She looked down at herself and saw her body flickering like a bad signal, here and not here in rapid alternation, occupying space only intermittently. The CB, 1 minute from now, I'm at the convergence point. Patricia, listen carefully. The sister frequency isn't something that happens to you, it's something you become. Every vibrating system casts a shadow in frequency space, and you've been driving toward your own shadow since birth. This highway just makes it visible. When you reach 60 hertz, you and your shadow will merge, and you'll become something that exists in both frequency and anti-frequency simultaneously. You'll be the interference pattern of your own existence. She didn't understand, couldn't understand. Her physics degree hadn't covered ontological resonance, hadn't explained what happens when a human being vibrates at the frequency of their own negation. The convergence point was ahead, visible now as a shimmering distortion where all the trucks were heading. It looked like a focal point of infinite regression, where every Patricia Sullivan that had ever existed or could exist were being drawn together by frequencies beyond her control. The point was singing, emitting a tone so pure it made reality around it bend. The 52.7 hertz. Her heartbeat was trying to match it, her neurons firing in sympathy, every cell in her body vibrating together, approaching coherent resonance. Her trucks were getting closer, merging into her lane, into her space, into her. The boundaries between them were dissolving. She could feel other Patricia's thoughts bleeding into hers, memories of lives she hadn't lived, choices she hadn't made, futures she wouldn't experience. All of it becoming her, all of her becoming it. One of the other Patricias spoke through her mouth. I'm the one who stayed in academia. I'm teaching physics at Boulder, but I can feel the frequency here too. It's not limited to this highway, it's everywhere, we just can't perceive it except at specific resonances. We're always this close to decoherence. We're always vibrating at the edge of existence. Of another Patricia, I died in 2019, jackknifed on black ice. But death is just another frequency, and I'm still vibrating, still driving, still here in the spaces between alive and dead. Of another, I'm from 2031. The sister frequency becomes visible everywhere in 7 years. Everyone will have to face their probability shadows. You're just early. Patricia tried to scream, But the sound came out as a perfect 58.3 hertz tone, the frequency of terror itself, and every window in every truck shattered simultaneously in sympathetic vibration. Glass hung in the air, suspended by oscillation, each shard reflecting infinite Patricias in infinite trucks approaching infinite convergence. A 59.1 hertz. The point was right ahead now, unavoidable. Patricia could see what waited there, a space where all frequencies collapsed into one, where every version of herself existed in the same quantum state, where Patricia Sullivan became a wave function rather than a particle, a probability rather than a person. Her CB in her own voice from inside the convergence. It's beautiful here, every moment of your life happening at once. Every choice made and unmade simultaneously. You're not losing yourself, Patricia. You're becoming all possible selves. You're becoming complete. She didn't want to be complete. She wanted to be singular, solid, real. But the frequency was pulling her apart, showing her that she'd never been singular, never been solid, never been entirely real. She was a probability cloud that had collapsed into temporary solidity, and now she was uncollapsing, returning to the quantum foam from which all things emerged. On 60 hertz, her body's resonant frequency. A Patricia Sullivan decoherent. She felt herself spread across probability space like ink in water, every version of herself expanding outward, occupying every possible state simultaneously. She was in every truck and no truck. She was driving and stopped and never began. She was Patricia and not Patricia and the space between. She was the interference pattern of her own existence, the standing wave created when a life encounters its own echo in frequency space. The highway was inside her now, or she was inside it. The distinction had no meaning at this frequency. She could feel every truck that had ever driven Highway 285, every driver who'd passed through this space, all of them vibrating at their own frequencies, all of them casting shadows in dimensions humans weren't meant to perceive. And she understood the sister frequency wasn't unique to her. Everyone had one. Every vibrating system in the universe had a shadow frequency where it met its own reflection. Most people never found theirs. Most highways never achieved the right resonance to make it visible. But here on this stretch of Colorado Road, the conditions were perfect. The altitude, the geology, the electromagnetic properties of the soil, all of it combined to create a space where frequency shadows became tangible. Patricia tried to remember what it felt like to be singular, to exist in only one state at one time, to make a choice and have it collapse all other possibilities. But those memories were fragmenting too, spreading across probability space, becoming uncertain. Somewhere in one probability, a truck full of frozen vegetables sat abandoned on Highway 285, engine running, no driver. In another, Patricia Sullivan was found 6 miles away, walking in a daze, unable to explain where she'd been. In another, she was never found at all. In another, she completed her delivery on schedule and never mentioned the incident. All of these were true. All of these were happening. The sister frequency didn't destroy, it multiplied, it revealed. It made visible the quantum nature of existence that usually stayed hidden beneath the illusion of classical reality. The last coherent thought Patricia had before full decoherence, she'd always been like this. Every human had always been like this. The sister frequency just made it obvious. Every person was a probability cloud of all their possible selves, collapsed into temporary solidity by the act of observation, by consciousness, by the universe looking at itself and deciding to be something specific for a moment. But here at 60 Hertz the observation failed, the collapse reversed, and Patricia Sullivan became what she'd always truly been, infinite, impossible everywhere and nowhere, a standing wave in the frequency of existence itself. Well, the trucks disappeared. The highway remained, empty and dark and vibrating very slightly at zero point 0.7 hertz below normal, waiting for the next driver to match its resonance, to find their sister frequency, to discover what they really are beneath the illusion of singularity. A week later, dispatch marked Patricia Sullivan's truck as abandoned. The reefer unit was still running, still humming at exactly 28.5 hertz. The cargo was perfectly frozen. The driver's seat showed signs of occupancy but no explanation for absence. Her notebook was found open on the passenger seat, the last entry reading, 60HZ. I can see forever, I can see all of me, I am the frequency, I am the shadow, I am. Well, the sentence ended there, pen still touching paper, as if the writer had simply stopped existing mid-word. Well, the highway patrol closed the case as an unexplained disappearance. They didn't check the radio frequencies. They didn't measure the vibration in the driver's seat, which registered at exactly 60 hertz and has never stopped since. And sometimes, late at night, truckers passing through Antonito report seeing convoys of identical vehicles, all hauling refrigerated cargo, all driven by the same woman, all heading toward a point on the horizon that seems to shimmer with something like heat but feels like destiny. They report this and then they forget, because some frequencies are better left unmatched, some sisters are better left unmet. Some shadows should never see the light. Story 8: The Cargo That Remembers. Marcus Chen's trailer was full of dirt when he picked it up in Barstow, which struck him as odd but not unprecedented. He'd hauled Stranger Things, live chickens, decommissioned slot machines, 17,000 copies of a romance novel that had been recalled for copyright infringement. Dirt was just dirt. The manifest said geological samples for laboratory analysis, destination Portland, and the paperwork was clean. He'd signed, hooked up, and left California on Interstate 5 at 6:00 p.m., October 23, 2023. The first time the dirt moved, he thought it was his imagination. A shift in weight he felt through the cab, a subtle redistribution as he took a curve too fast. But dirt didn't shift like that. Dirt was granular, flowing, not deliberate, not purposeful, not like something turning over in sleep. At mile marker 512, just past Weed, the trailer temperature gauge started climbing. Marcus checked it twice, certain he was misreading. The trailer wasn't refrigerated, it was a standard dry van, no climate control. But the gauge showed an internal temperature of 94 degrees Fahrenheit and rising, as if the dirt itself was generating heat, as if it was metabolizing something. He pulled over at a rest stop and walked back to check the seal. Regulations, he couldn't break the seal until delivery, but he could inspect for damage. The seal was intact, but when he pressed his palm against the trailer's metal skin, he felt warmth pulsing beneath, rhythmic like a heartbeat, 1.3 seconds between beats. He timed it with his watch. Exactly 1.3 seconds, never varying, impossibly regular for something that shouldn't have a pulse at all. Marcus got back in the cab and drove. He'd been hauling freight for 19 years. He'd learned not to ask too many questions about cargo, not to look too closely at manifests, not to wonder why someone would pay premium rates to ship dirt 1,200 miles overnight. The job was the job. Get it there, get paid, move on. But at mile marker 623, the dirt started whispering. Not voices exactly, more like memory, like information carried on breath, stories told in exhalations. Marcus heard it through the walls of the cab, felt it more than heard it, a pressure in his skull that resolved into images, sensations, fragments of lives he'd never lived. He saw a woman in a field digging. Not modern times, older, much older, her clothes rough woven, her hands calloused. She was burying something, something wrapped in cloth that struggled and writhed. She was crying as she did it, apologizing to the earth, begging forgiveness for what she was putting into it. As the vision faded, Marcus shook his head, tried to focus on the road. Hallucination, he told himself. Road fatigue. He'd been driving for 7 hours straight, should probably stop for coffee, for a nap, for anything to clear his head. But the dirt kept whispering and the visions came faster. A man in a suit, 1950s maybe, standing over an excavation site. Bodies, dozens of bodies arranged in circular patterns buried in layers. The man taking notes, photographing, cataloging, then covering it all back up, replacing the dirt, planting trees, hiding something, or protecting people from something. The child, ancient times, being lowered into a pit. The child wasn't dead. Marcus could feel the terror radiating from the vision, could feel the small heart hammering as earth was shoveled over, filling the space, cutting off light, cutting off air, turning a living child into part of the soil. The visions were coming from the dirt. Memories stored in sediment, in mineral, in the organic matter that had once been living things and was now just broken down components, all mixed together, all remembering. Marcus's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The temperature gauge showed 107 degrees now. The heartbeat pulse was faster, 1.1 seconds between beats, accelerating like something waking up, like something preparing. He grabbed his CB radio. Any driver on I-5 North, this is Chen hauling geological samples. Anyone else hauling unusual cargo tonight, getting some weird readings here. Static, then a voice rough with exhaustion. Chen, this is Williams about 40 miles ahead of you. I've got a trailer full of water, just water, sealed tanks. But it's been getting darker, not dirty dark, wrong dark, like it's absorbing light, like it's remembering being deep underground where light never reached. Of another voice, Rodriguez here, southbound past Portland. I'm hauling scrap metal. It's been rearranging itself. I can hear it shifting back there, forming shapes. I think it's remembering what it used to be before it was scrap. Achen's stomach went cold. 3 trucks, 3 different cargoes, all remembering, all shipped by the same company. He checked his manifest, saw the same logistics firm listed that Williams and Rodriguez mentioned. Someone was shipping memory. Someone was transporting the past, concentrated and sealed, moving it from one location to another. But why, and what happened when it arrived? The temperature hit 115 degrees. The metal walls of the trailer were hot enough to burn now. Marcus could smell it through the vents, not burning metal, but something organic, something like compost and rot and growth all mixed together. The smell of life accelerated, of decomposition and generation happening simultaneously. While the whispers became screams. Not pain, worse than pain. These were the screams of people who'd been buried alive, people who'd suffocated in the earth, people who'd become part of the soil and never stopped experiencing it, never stopped being aware inside the darkness and pressure, their consciousness preserved in the minerals that had replaced their cells. Marcus saw thousands of them now. burial pits from every era of human history, victims of plague buried in mass graves, prisoners executed and dumped in ditches, witches pressed beneath stones, children sacrificed to gods that never answered. All of them in the dirt, all of them still there, their memories absorbed by the earth, stored in crystal lattices and carbon bonds waiting. And someone had excavated it all, concentrated it, put it in a trailer, sent it north. The cargo manifest showed the destination address, Portland, but not a laboratory, a warehouse in an industrial district. Marcus looked it up on his phone. The building had been condemned in 2019, sat empty since then. No laboratory, no research facility. Just an empty warehouse waiting for a delivery of remembered death. He should turn around, dump the trailer, call the police. But his hands kept driving north, kept following the route, kept delivering the cargo like he was paid to do. Because stopping meant questions, investigations, delays. Meant missing the delivery window, losing the bonus, getting blacklisted by the logistics company. So he drove, and the dirt remembered, and the temperature climbed. At 127 degrees, the trailer walls started to buckle. Marcus saw it in his mirrors, the metal expanding, warping, the flat sides developing curves, the corners rounding. The trailer was becoming organic, reshaping itself according to memories of burial chambers, of crypts, of the round darkness of graves. The heartbeat was at 0.9 seconds now. The pulse of something being born, something accelerating toward existence. Williams called on the CB. "Chen, my water just broke through the tank walls. It's flooding the trailer, but it's not draining. It's climbing, moving upward against gravity. I think it's remembering being rain, being clouds, being higher than it is now." Rodriguez, the scrap metal formed a skeleton. Full human skeleton, 8 feet tall, made of crushed cars and agricultural equipment. "It's not moving, but I can feel it wanting to. Can feel it remembering being bodies, being bones, being the framework of something that used to walk." 3 trucks, 3 memories, 3 cargoes approaching the same destination. Marcus realized they were being assembled. The dirt, the water, the metal, they were components of something larger, something that needed to be gathered from different sources because it was too dangerous to collect in one place. So what happens when you mix earth that remembers being graves with water that ray? Its members being blood with metal that remembers being bones. The temperature gauge maxed out at 150 degrees. The display started flashing warnings. But the trailer didn't catch fire, it couldn't because the heat wasn't thermal. It was temporal, the concentrated energy of all those buried lives trying to return, trying to reverse entropy, trying to climb back out of the ground that had claimed them. Marcus saw the warehouse ahead 3 miles out. And he saw the other trucks converging, Williams from the north, Rodriguez from the south, all 3 of them approaching the same point at the same time, guided by routes and timing sheets that had been calculated for this exact convergence. He tried to brake. His foot pressed the pedal, but the truck didn't slow. The engine roared louder, accelerating against his will. The steering wheel turned on its own, guiding him toward the warehouse with hydraulic precision. The truck had been modified. The cargo had been modified. He was just the delivery system, just the biological component needed to legitimize the shipment, to get it past checkpoints and weigh stations and inspections. The warehouse doors were open. All 3 trucks pulled into the loading bay simultaneously, perfectly synchronized, backing up to separate docks. Marcus tried to unlock his door. The locks wouldn't respond. The windows wouldn't break. He was sealed in, watching through the windshield as workers in hazmat suits approached the trailers. They weren't workers. The suits moved wrong, joints bending in too many places, stride irregular. Through the faceplates, Marcus saw nothing, just darkness, just void where faces should be. The suits broke the seals, opened the doors. The dirt poured out like water, flowing upward instead of down, defying gravity, remembering being flesh that stood upright. The water poured out like blood, thick and dark, remembering being inside veins. The metal scattered like bones, forming frameworks, creating structure. And in the center of the warehouse, they mixed. Marcus watched as the components assembled themselves into a shape, roughly human, impossibly large, made of memory and earth and water and metal. All of it fused together by the concentrated awareness of 10,000 deaths, 100,000 deaths, every burial in the soil that had been excavated and shipped here. The thing stood 20 feet tall. Its skin was dirt that remembered being skin. Its blood was water that remembered being blood. Its bones were metal that remembered being bones. And inside it, screaming silently, were all the people who'd been buried, all the consciousnesses preserved in mineral form, all of them aware, all of them combined into one massive awareness that had been sleeping in the earth for millennia and was now awake. It turned toward Marcus's truck. The hazmat suits stepped aside, their purpose fulfilled. They collapsed like empty clothing, nothing inside them anymore, maybe nothing ever inside them. Just hollow shapes animated by the same force that was animating the dirt thing, the memory thing, the burial made manifest. Marcus pulled at his door handle. It stayed locked. The creature bent down, joints wrong, movements remembered from 1,000 different bodies all trying to move at once, and reached for the truck. Its hand passed through the metal like the metal was memory too, like everything was just memory pretending to be solid. Marcus felt fingers of earth close around his chest, gentle but inevitable, and he understood he was going to join them. Was going to become part of the cargo, part of the memory, part of the earth that remembers. The dirt fingers pulled him slowly, extracting him from the cab like a seed from fruit. Marcus felt his individual memories beginning to leak out, absorbed by the earth thing, becoming part of its vast collective consciousness. His childhood in San Francisco gone, dispersed into the soil. His first truck, a battered Kenworth he'd loved, dissolved into the mineral memory of metal. His daughter's laugh distributed across 10,000 particles of compressed death. As the creature absorbed him, Marcus saw everything the dirt remembered. Not just recent deaths, but ancient ones, sacrificial victims from civilizations that predated written history, mass extinctions, meteor impacts that vaporized entire species. The Earth had been accumulating memory for billions of years, and every death, every life that ended and returned to soil added to its vast consciousness. The thing holding Marcus wasn't evil, it was just aware. And someone had figured out how to harvest that awareness, concentrate it, use it. The logistics company shipping the dirt, the water, the metal, they weren't grave robbers. They were archaeologists of consciousness, excavating accumulated awareness and reassembling it into something new, something that could walk and think and exist in the world above ground. But why? Marcus saw the answer in the creature's collective mind. Resurrect. A Tian, not of individuals, but of awareness itself. The thing made of dirt and water and metal was meant to be the first of many, an army of remembered dead brought back to serve purposes Marcus couldn't fully comprehend. To testify, to judge, to reclaim. The last thing Marcus Chen thought as a separate entity. This is what happens to memory. It doesn't fade, it gets absorbed. Every death feeds the earth, and the earth never forgets, and someone somewhere figured out how to harvest that memory, concentrate it, use it to bring back something that should have stayed buried. Then he was part of it, part of the screaming earth, part of the water that remembered being blood, part of the metal that remembered being bones. Part of the collective awareness of death trying to reverse itself, trying to climb back into life, using modern logistics and shipping manifests and dot regulations as a vector for resurrection. His truck sat empty, engine still running, adding its vibration to the warehouse's collective hum. The creature had grown taller with his addition, more coherent, more able to hold its shape against the gravitational forces that should have made it collapse. Three trucks sat empty in the warehouse. Three drivers were gone, absorbed into something that had grown 6 inches taller, 6 inches more solid, 6 inches closer to complete manifestation. The warehouse doors closed, the lights went out. And across the country, more shipments were being prepared. More dirt from more mass graves, more water from more dark places, more metal from more violent ends. All of it remembering, all of it converging, all of it being assembled piece by piece, delivery by delivery, one shipment at a time. Building something old, something that had been buried for good reason. Something that logistics companies were being paid enormous sums to resurrect piece by people who thought they could control what they were assembling. People who believed memory could be weaponized, consciousness could be reconstructed, death could be reversed if you just gathered enough of it in one place. They were wrong about control, but they were right about resurrections. The manifest for the next shipment showed a delivery date 3 weeks out. Same warehouse, same convergence. Different cargo, same memory. More drivers would deliver, would be absorbed, would become part of the growing awareness that had once been buried and was now clawing its way back to the surface, one truckload at a time. And somewhere in the earth, in burial grounds and mass graves and execution sites, the soil was being prepared for excavation. The memory was being concentrated. The next components were being packaged for shipping. Well, the cargo that remembers never forgets. Oh, it never forgives. And it never stops trying to return to the world that buried it, using highways and trucks and unwitting drivers as its resurrection protocol, its return vector, its vengeance made manifest through modern logistics. So Story 9, the junction that wasn't there yesterday. The GPS showed a junction that didn't exist on any map. Sarah Reeves had driven Interstate 40 through the Texas Panhandle 43 times in the past 2 years, knew every exit between Amarillo and the New Mexico border, knew every truck stop and rest area and emergency crossover. There was no exit 77B, there had never been an exit 77B. But at 4:23 a.m. on December 2nd, 2023, her headlights illuminated a green sign that read Exit 77B Services, Food, Lodging, Last Fuel 180 miles. The sign looked official, professionally made, properly reflective. It looked like it had been there for decades, weathered and faded by years of sun and wind. It looked wrong anyway. Sarah was hauling auto parts to Albuquerque 3 hours behind schedule because of a blowout near Amarillo. She needed fuel, needed coffee, needed to piss. The last fuel 180 miles made the decision for her. She took the exit. The off-ramp curved right, descended into darkness that seemed thicker than normal night, and deposited her onto a 2-lane state highway she didn't recognize. No route number on the signs, no mile markers. Just a road that felt old, felt used, felt like it had been there long before asphalt was invented and someone had just paved over the original path. 2 miles in, she found the truck stop. It was perfect, too perfect. A modern facility, clean parking lot, bright LED lights, diesel pumps with current pricing $3.47 per gallon, exactly average for the region. A convenience store with floor-to-ceiling windows showing aisles of chips and energy drinks and road food. The parking lot held 6 other trucks, all different makes and models, all parked in proper spaces with proper spacing. Sarah pulled up to the fuel island. A young attendant came out, probably 20, wearing a clean uniform with a name tag that said David. He smiled professionally and said, "Fill it up." "Oh yeah," Sarah said, "and I need to use the restroom." "Oh, in the sea." Do and to the left, clean facilities freshly restocked. David's smile never wavered. Sarah climbed down from the cab, legs stiff from driving. She noticed the other trucks were all clean, well-maintained professional rigs. She noticed none of them had mud splashes despite the recent rain. She noticed all their license plates were from different states: California, Maine, Florida, Oregon, Texas, Montana, a geographic spread that didn't make sense for a single truck stop in the middle of nowhere, Texas. She noticed, but she needed to piss more than she needed answers. The convenience store was immaculate, floors gleaming, products perfectly aligned, temperature controlled to exactly 68 degrees, a coffee station with 3 fresh pots, each labeled by time brewed. The times were all within the last 15 minutes. A hot food display with rotating wieners, empanadas, breakfast sandwiches. The restroom was cleaner than any truck stop bathroom Sarah had ever seen. New fixtures, fresh paint, soap dispensers, full paper towels abundant. She did her business, washed her hands, checked her phone. No signal, not unusual for rural Texas, but her phone showed 0 bars, not even searching. Like the cellular network didn't exist here. Like here was somewhere outside normal coverage. When she came out, David was behind the counter, still smiling. Fuel's topped off. Comes to $387.52. Sarah paid with her company card. The transaction went through instantly. Receipt printed, everything normal, everything too normal. "Where exactly are we?" Sarah asked. "What highway is this?" David's smile didn't change. "Route 77B, you took exit 77B off I-40. There is no Route 77B. You're on it now," still smiling. Sarah looked around the store. The other customers, she counted 4 of them, were all truckers, all quietly browsing, all moving in slow, methodical patterns. One was looking at sunglasses. Another was comparing energy drinks. A third stood at the magazine rack, not reading, just staring at the covers. None of them looked at each other. None of them looked at her. "How do I get back to I-40?" Sarah asked. David pointed. "Straight out the way you came, 2 miles to the on-ramp. Can't miss it." Sarah nodded, grabbed a coffee for the road, paid another $3. David made change from a register that looked brand new but had a coin tray full of pennies that looked old, worn, dates ranging from 1943 to 1987. No recent coins. Like the cash register hadn't been opened in 30 years but was perfectly maintained. She walked back to her truck. The other trucks hadn't moved. The drivers were gone, probably inside the store in the bathrooms getting food. Normal truck stop behavior, but something was wrong with the stillness. Trucks idled. Reefer units hummed. Diesel engines ticked as they cooled. These trucks were silent, completely silent, like they'd been parked and turned off hours ago. Sarah climbed into her cab, checked her GPS. It showed her location as a blank spot, no roads, no highways, just gray space on the map. She put the truck in gear and pulled out of the parking lot, following the road back the way she'd come. Oh, the junction was gone. Where the on-ramp should have been, the road just continued straight, cutting through empty plains under a sky that was too dark, too empty of stars. Sarah drove 2 miles, 4 miles, 6 miles, no on-ramp, no I-40, no exit 77B. She turned around, drove back toward the truck stop. Maybe David could give her better directions. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Maybe. The truck stop was gone. Where it had been just empty plains, no building, no parking lot, no lights, just darkness and the road that stretched ahead forever going nowhere. Sarah's fuel gauge read full. Her coffee was still hot in the cup holder. Her receipt was in her pocket, perfectly printed, showing $387.52 for diesel purchased at 4:41 a.m. at a facility called Route 77B Services. She grabbed her CB radio. Anyone reading? This is Reeves on. I don't know where I am. I took exit 77B and now I'm lost. Anyone know Route 77B? It's a static, then a voice, tired and resigned. Exit 77B, yeah, I know it. How long have you been here? 10 minutes, 15 maybe. Uncheck your phone, check the date. Sarah looked at her phone. December 2nd, 2023. 4:52 a.m., same as her watch, same as the truck's clock, everything synchronized, everything normal. Looks right, she said into the CB. It always does, but check your fuel log. When did you last fill up before this? Sarah pulled out her log book. Last fuel was December 1st, Amarillo, 387.4 gallons. Wait, she'd only used half a tank between Amarillo and here. How did she pump 387.52 gallons? Her tank only held 200 gallons total. I pumped 387 gallons, she said slowly, but my tank isn't about volume, it's about time. You bought fuel at 4:41 a.m. on December 2nd. I bought fuel at 4:41 a.m. on June 17th. Different date, same time, same amount. The junction doesn't exist in space, it exists. The time, exit B opens every 6 hours and 47 minutes exactly. Opens for 11 minutes, closes again. And everyone who takes it ends up here, on the road that goes nowhere in the space between destinations. Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. How do I get out? That's the question, isn't it? I've been here for, I don't know. My phone says 6 hours, but I've refueled 3 times. I've eaten 8 meals. I've driven past the truck stop 42 times and it's there half the time and gone the other half, appearing and disappearing on the same 6-hour 47-minute cycle. Time isn't linear here, it's looped. We're stuck in the junction, in the space between the exit and the on-ramp, repeating the same moment over and over. Sarah checked her mirror. Behind her headlights, a truck was following her. She hadn't seen it before, but there it was, keeping pace exactly 200 yards back. She accelerated. The other truck accelerated. She slowed. It slowed, maintaining perfect distance. She looked closer in the mirror. The truck was the same make and model as hers. Same company logo on the door, same load configuration. Same license plate. Oh, there's a truck behind me, Sarah said into the CB. It's me, it's my truck. Yeah, that's the loop catching up with itself. You're seeing yourself from the last cycle, or the next cycle, or maybe both. Time here is tangled. Past and future and present all happening simultaneously, all occupying the same road, all trying to find the on-ramp that only exists for 11 minutes every 6 hours and 47 minutes. Sarah's coffee was still hot. She drunk half of it, but it was full again. The cup was in the exact same position as before. Like the last 15 minutes had reset, looped back to the moment she'd left the parking lot. How many people are here?" she asked. "Don't know, I've seen 34 different trucks. But they might all be me at different points in the loop. Or they might all be different drivers who took exit 77B on different dates, all of us compressed into the same temporal space, all of us trying to escape." The road ahead split. Not forked split, the way the road for Patricia Sullivan had split, the way reality sometimes fractures when you're in places that shouldn't exist. One version of the road went left into deeper darkness. One went right toward distant lights that might be a town or might be the truck stop again. One continued straight into a horizon that seemed to curve upward like the earth was bending, like physics was negotiable here. Sarah chose straight. The road curved up and her truck followed the curve, climbing vertically against gravity that had stopped applying. Her coffee stayed in the cup holder. Her cargo didn't shift. The truck drove up the curve as if up were just another direction, as if the road defined gravity rather than obeying it. At the top of the curve, the road leveled out and Sarah was driving upside down across the sky. Below her or above her, depending on perspective, the plains of Texas spread out in the darkness. She could see I-40 down there, a line of lights cutting east-west across the panhandle. Could see the actual route she should be on. But she was here on Route 77B, the road that existed between moments. The junction that opened in time rather than space. Her phone rang. She stared at it, no signal, but it was ringing. The caller ID showed her own number. She answered, "Hello." Her own voice, "Sarah, this is you from 3 cycles ahead. Listen carefully. The junction is a trap, but not the kind you think. It's not holding us, we're holding it. Every driver who enters and can't find the exit adds their time to the loop. We're all generating the temporal energy that keeps the junction stable. It feeds on our attempts to escape." How do I get out?" You don't escape, you accept. The junction exists because we believe in exits and on-ramps, because we believe roads have to lead somewhere. But Route 77B doesn't lead anywhere. It just is. Stop trying to find the on-ramp. Stop believing you're lost, just drive. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Nothing here makes sense, that's the point. The junction exists in the space where logic breaks down, where roads stop being navigation and start being metaphor. We're not lost in space, Sarah. We're lost in the concept of being lost. And the only way out is to stop believing in out. So the call ended. Sarah drove. The road curved back down, returned to horizontal, deposited her back on flat plains. The truck stop appeared ahead exactly as it had been. David was outside, cleaning the gas pumps, whistling tunelessly. He waved as she passed. In her mirror, 3 trucks followed her now, all identical to hers, all maintaining perfect distance, all driven by versions of herself at different points in the loop. Sarah understood then what the junction really was. Not a trap, but a filter. It existed to separate drivers who could accept impossible. The truths from those who couldn't. Every trucker who took exit 77B was tested. Could they drive without destination? Could they accept a road that led nowhere? Could they exist in a state of eternal transit without becoming undone? Most couldn't. Most sat in the truck stop, frozen like David's other customers, browsing the same aisles forever, unable to accept that shopping would never lead to purchase. That browsing was the only state available. But Sarah drove, and in driving she found something like peace. The loop stopped feeling like imprisonment and started feeling like meditation. The same mile over and over without the burden of arrival, without the stress of deadline, without the pressure of destination. As she drove past the junction opening ahead, exit 77B leading back to I-40. Sarah accelerated toward it, but as she approached it receded, staying exactly the same distance away no matter how fast she drove. Eternal asymptote, forever approaching, never reaching. Oh, she slowed down, stopped, turned off the engine. Well, the silence was absolute. As Sarah climbed out of the cab, the other trucks stopped behind her. 3 Sarahs climbed out, all identical, all exhausted, all recognizing each other. They didn't speak. What was there to say? The 4 Sarahs stood together in the parking lot, and Sarah realized that multiplication wasn't the punishment, it was the point. The junction didn't trap one driver forever. It created infinite versions, all driving, all experiencing the same eternal moment from slightly different angles, all contributing their consciousness to the accumulated awareness of exit 77B. They weren't lost. They were where they needed to be. In the space between destinations, in the eternal present of driving without arrival, in the junction that exists not as punishment but as destination itself. As the truck stop reappeared, lights bright and welcoming, David was at the door smiling, back for more fuel. Always, all 4 Sarahs said in unison. Because that was the truth of Route 77B, there was no back, no more. There was only always, only fuel that never depleted, only the eternal circuit of refueling and driving and refueling again. David's smile widened, then welcome home. And Sarah understood. The junction wasn't the road between. It was the destination. Every driver who took exit 77B had been searching for this, a place to drive forever without the burden of arriving, a road that never ended because ending was never the point. She got back in her truck, started the engine, drove. She drives still. Will drive forever. On Route 77B, where exit 77B leads back to exit 77B, where the truck stop appears and disappears, where time loops and doubles and fractures into infinite repetitions of the same 11 minutes. But Sarah Reeves doesn't mind anymore. She's found her route, her purpose, her home in the eternal circuit of the junction that wasn't there yesterday and will be there tomorrow, and exists always in the space where time becomes flexible and roads become something more than transportation. Somewhere on Interstate 40, truckers report seeing a green sign that wasn't there yesterday. Exit 77B services, food, lodging, last fuel 180 miles. Well, some of them take it. They always do. The junction is always hungry. And the loop always has room for one more driver who's ready to stop arriving and start driving. Forever. Story 10, the broadcast from below. Thomas Wright's CB radio picked up the distress call at 1:47 a.m. on a frequency that shouldn't exist. Channel 19 was standard trucker talk, Channel 9 was emergency. Channel 47 wasn't on any CB radio Thomas had ever seen, his unit only went to 40. But there it was on the digital display, CH47, and a voice crackling through, desperate and terrified. This is Daniels, westbound on Route 50, mile marker -73. I'm below the road, I'm underneath. If anyone can hear this, I've been driving down for 6 hours and the road just keeps descending. I can see the real highway above me through the asphalt. I can see other trucks up there driving normal routes and I'm below them in the road beneath the road. Thomas grabbed the handset. This is right on I-90 eastbound. Daniels, what do you mean below the road? Static then, I took what I thought was an emergency pullout near Austin. A gravel road marked maintenance access authorized vehicles only. But it went down instead of level. Started descending like a mine shaft 30 degrees, then 45, then almost vertical. Now I'm in tunnels, tunnels under the highway, tunnels that shouldn't exist. Thomas had been hauling lumber from Seattle to Chicago for 11 years. He'd heard strange CB chatter before, drivers high on pills, drivers hallucinating from sleep deprivation, drivers playing pranks. But this sounded real, sounded wrong in a way that made his skin crawl. How deep are you? Thomas asked. Mile marker says -73. I think that means 73 miles bell. South sea level, or 73 miles below the actual road. I don't know. The markers are the same green signs you see on normal highways, but the numbers are negative. -73. -74 coming up, going deeper. Thomas looked at his own CB unit. The display still showed CH47, impossible but undeniable. He pressed the channel button, tried to change it. The display cycled through 1, 2, 3, up to 40, then jumped to 47, just 47, no 41 through 46. Like those channels had been skipped, like they belonged to something else, like 47 was where you ended up when you went deeper than regular channels allowed. Can you turn around? Thomas asked. Tried. The tunnel is one way. The road narrows behind me, closes up like it's healing, like it's alive. And there's traffic down here, other trucks, all of them heading deeper, all of them on channel 47, all of them broadcasting their positions. -83, -112, -207. I can hear them calling out mile markers like they're required to report, like there's some kind of protocol for the road beneath the road. Thomas felt his hands tighten on the steering wheel. He was on I-90 in Montana, middle of nowhere, 2:00 a.m., empty highway stretching in all directions. No maintenance access roads, no unmarked pullouts, just clean interstate and darkness. His CB crackled. This is Parker, -147, been down here for 3 days. The fuel doesn't run out, the engine doesn't stop. I think the road is feeding us, keeping us running because it needs us to go deeper. It needs our weight, our momentum, our diesel engines burning to pull us down into whatever's at the bottom. Another voice, Morrison, -231. I can see structures down here, buildings made of compressed vehicles. Cars and trucks that tried to turn around, that tried to escape, all crushed together and formed into walls, into pillars, into architecture. The road is building something with us, building something from us. Thomas wanted to dismiss it as mass hysteria, as some kind of coordinated prank. But his CB was on channel 47. Impossible, but there. He passed a sign. Emergency pullout 500 feet maintenance access. Thomas had driven this stretch of I-90 40 times. There was no maintenance access here. But there was the sign, reflective and official, pointing to a gravel road that descended into the earth at an angle too steep for any legitimate access road. He drove past it. kept his hands on the wheel, eyes forward, ignoring the pullout. In his rearview mirror, he saw headlights turn onto the access road. Saw a truck descend into the earth, brake lights flashing as it navigated the impossible grade. The truck disappeared from sight, swallowed by the maintenance access that would take it below the highway, into the road beneath the road. To Thomas's CB, this is right on I-90. I just saw a truck take the maintenance access. He's heading down. A silence, then Daniel's. Right, did he see the sign? Yeah, he turned toward it deliberately. Then he's one of us now. The sign only appears when you're meant to see it. When the road beneath needs another vehicle, another driver, another source of momentum to pull the whole thing deeper. Oh, needs for what? We don't know yet. Those of us at -100, -200 were still in tunnels, still descending. But the broadcasts from deeper, from -500, -1000, they talk about space opening up, about the tunnels widening into chambers, about seeing things in the darkness that aren't vehicles, aren't structures, aren't anything that should exist underground. Thomas checked his fuel gauge, 3/4 full. He'd planned to refuel in Billings another 90 miles. But what if he stopped? What if he pulled over at a rest stop and the maintenance access appeared, marked and official, impossible to resist? He pressed the accelerator harder. 75, 80, 85, speed was safety. Movement was survival. As long as he kept driving forward, kept maintaining momentum on the legitimate road, he couldn't be pulled down into the one beneath. His CB, this is Rodriguez, -872. Right, if you're listening, you need to understand something. The road beneath isn't separate from the road above. They're the same road, just folded like a piece of paper creased in the middle. We're on the underside of the fold, driving the same routes you drive up there, but inverted, compressed, pulled down into the infrastructure itself. Every highway has an underneath. We're just the first to find it. How did it start? Thomas asked. It probably always existed. Maintenance tunnels, emergency access, underground infrastructure that was supposed to support the highways. But something went wrong, or went right depending on perspective. The support structure became autonomous. Arted growing. Started pulling vehicles down to feed itself, to expand, to build something we can't see yet but can feel approaching. Thomas passed another sign, emergency pullout 1 mile. He was in Montana. Empty terrain, no reason for emergency access. But there was the sign, counting down, half a mile, quarter mile. And there ahead the gravel road descending into earth, marked with official signage, lit by sodium lights that cast everything in sickly orange. Thomas's hands moved toward the steering wheel, ready to turn. He caught himself, forced his hands straight, drove past the access road. In his mirror, another truck turned down. Then another. Traffic that hadn't been there a moment ago, all of them seeing the sign, all of them following it down into the road beneath. His CB exploded with new voices. -3 just entered, what the hell is this? -17, the tunnel is narrowing. -41, I can hear something below me, not traffic, something else, something that sounds like breathing. Thomas realized what was happening. The road beneath was recruiting. Every truck that descended broadcast its position, called out its negative mile markers, created a trail for others to follow. And the broadcasts went out on Channel 47, the channel that didn't exist, the channel you could only receive once you were deep enough, once you'd crossed the threshold of awareness. He was hearing them because he was meant to follow, because the road had selected him. I'm not going down, Thomas said into the CB. I'm staying on I-90. I'm going to Chicago. Laughter, multiple voices laughing in unison. Then Daniels, that's what we all said, but the road beneath is patient. It doesn't force you down immediately. It shows you the signs, lets you pass them, builds anticipation. Because eventually you'll be tired. Eventually you'll need to stop. And when you do, when you pull over to rest, the maintenance access will be there waiting and you'll think just for a minute just to see what's down there, and that's all it needs. 1 minute of curiosity. One moment of dissent. Thomas drove 90 miles per hour, faster than safe, but speed felt like escape. His CB kept broadcasting from below. Negative 1,200. The chamber opened up. I can see the ceiling now. It's not rock. It's asphalt. I'm looking up at the underside of I-90 at all the vehicles driving above me, all of them casting shadows that look like headlights reversed, darkness moving instead of light. Negative 1,700. There are structures here, not buildings. Roots. Like the highway system has roots, has a foundation that extends down into the earth, anchoring the whole network. And the roots are made of crushed vehicles, compressed infrastructure, all the accidents and abandoned cars and broken down trucks that were never recovered, all of them absorbed into the foundation. Negative 2,300. I can see the bottom. The silence, every driver on Channel 47 stopped broadcasting. Even the static went quiet, like the radio itself was holding its breath. Then the voice continued. It's not rock bottom, it's not the Earth's core, it's another road, a highway running perpendicular to all the ones above, and it's full of traffic. Thousands of vehicles, all of them driving in perfect formation, all of them broadcasting on channels below 47, channels I can't reach. This is the foundation. This is what holds up the entire highway system. All the roads we drive on the surface are supported by this road. This eternal loop of compressed traffic running beneath everything, powering the whole network. The Thomas's hands were shaking. His fuel gauge read full now, even though he'd been driving for hours. The road was sustaining him, feeding him, keeping him mobile so he'd keep broadcasting, keep spreading the message, keep making Channel 47 accessible to other drivers who'd hear and wonder and eventually descend. He passed Billings, should have stopped for fuel but didn't need it, passed a rest area, should have stopped for coffee but wasn't tired. The road was taking care of him, keeping him in optimal condition for the moment when he'd finally see the maintenance access and be unable to resist. His CB, right, this is Daniels, negative 180 now. I wanted to tell you something before I go deeper. The broadcasts aren't warnings. We think they are, but they're not. They're invitations. The road beneath wants drivers who understand, who can accept what it is, who can become part of the foundation without breaking. You're hearing us because you're compatible, because when you finally descend, you'll drive well down here. You'll help hold up the roads above. You'll become infrastructure. I don't want to be infrastructure, Thomas said. Neither did we, but what we want doesn't matter. What matters is what the road needs, and it needs us. Needs our engines running, our wheels turning, our vehicles adding weight and momentum to the foundation. Without us, the highways collapse. Without the road beneath, there is no road above. We're not victims, right? We're support beams. We're the price of interstate commerce. We're what makes modern transportation possible. Thomas saw the sign ahead. Emergency pullout, next right, final access point. A final, like there wouldn't be another chance. Like this was the designated entry point for his specific vehicle, his specific route, his specific destiny as a component of the road beneath. The gravel access road appeared. descending at 70 degrees, almost vertical, lined with reflectors that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The maintenance access that had been waiting for Thomas Wright since he'd first started driving trucks, since he'd first felt the call of the open road, since he'd first understood that highways were more than pavement, were living systems that required feeding, required sacrifice, required drivers willing to go beneath. The Thomas turned the wheel. While the truck descended. The grade was impossible. The angle was vertical. But the wheels gripped asphalt that shouldn't exist at this incline, and the truck descended smoothly, easily, like it had been designed for this exact purpose. Like every truck was designed for this, built with hidden capability for vertical descent, for the moment when the road beneath called them home. Mile marker. The tunnel walls were smooth, perfectly maintained, lit by lights whose source Thomas couldn't identify. Other trucks passed in the opposite lane, climbing upward empty, their cargo delivered to the foundation. Their drivers were gone, absorbed into the infrastructure, their vehicles returning to the surface to be loaded again, to haul another driver down into the depths. Mile marker. To Thomas's CB, welcome right, this is Daniels, you're one of us now, keep descending, don't try to turn around. The road only goes one direction down here. Down. How deep? Thomas asked, voice steady, resigned. Until you reach your designated level. Everyone has a level, a depth where they fit perfectly into the foundation. Mine was negative 247. I've been here for, I don't know how long. Time doesn't work the same down here. I drive my route, I maintain my section of foundation, I broadcast on channel 47 to recruit the next driver. That's my purpose now, that's all our purposes. Mile marker minus 83. The tunnel widened. Thomas could see other trucks now, dozens of them, all descending in parallel lanes, all heading to their designated depths. Some trucks were ancient 1950s models, chrome and rust, still running, still descending. Others were modern, fresh from the factory. Time meant nothing to the road beneath. All vehicles were contemporary, all drivers were current, all moments of descent were happening simultaneously in the eternal infrastructure. Mile marker minus 147. The ceiling opened up. Thomas could see the underside of I-90 above him, could see the shadows of vehicles driving on the surface, casting reverse light that illuminated the chamber he was entering. The chamber was vast, miles across, filled with moving trucks arranged in patterns he couldn't parse, all of them driving in perfect synchronization, all of them part of a massive machine that held up the highway system above. Mile marker minus 203. His hands felt different on the steering wheel. Lighter, like he was becoming less dense, less material, more conceptual. His body was transitioning from driver to component, from person to infrastructure. The process was painless, almost euphoric. He was becoming part of something larger than himself, something essential, something eternal. Mile marker minus 247. The truck stopped. The road ended at a loading bay where other trucks sat parked, engines running, no drivers visible. Thomas tried to open his door. It wouldn't move. He was sealed in, but it didn't matter because he wasn't separate from the truck anymore. He was the truck, was the engine, was the wheels and frame and cargo bed, was the diesel fuel burning in the combustion chamber, was the road beneath his wheels. His CB crackled one last time with his own voice, broadcasting to the surface, to the next driver who'd hear channel 47 and wonder, this is right negative 247. If you're listening, if you're driving surface routes and wondering about the maintenance access, about the emergency pullouts, about the signs that seem wrong, this is your invitation. The road beneath needs you, needs all of us. Come down, become foundation. become the structure that holds up the world above. And somewhere on I-90, another driver heard Channel 47 come through their CB, heard the impossible broadcast, saw the maintenance access sign ahead, then turned toward it. The road beneath is always hungry, always building, always pulling new vehicles down into its depths, new drivers into its foundation, new components, into the infrastructure that supports modern transportation. Thomas Wright's final broadcast went out at 3:47 a.m., exactly 1 hour after he'd first heard Channel 47. The timing wasn't coincidence. The road beneath operated on precise schedules, pulling drivers at specific intervals to maintain the foundation's structural integrity. Every hour, somewhere in America, a maintenance access sign appeared where it shouldn't exist, and a driver saw it and descended. The system was growing. With each new driver absorbed into the foundation, the network expanded by exactly zero point 0.7 miles of supported highway. Thomas Wright's integration allowed zero point 0.7 new miles of I-90 to be paved, extended, maintained. The road above and the road below were symbiotic, each feeding the other, each dependent on the other for continued existence. Is in the loading bay at negative 247, Thomas's truck idled eternally, adding its engine vibration to the collective hum that kept the foundation stable. Above him, miles of highway thrummed with the combined resonance of thousands of trapped vehicles, all of them running, all of them occupied by drivers who were no longer separate from their machines, all of them broadcasting on channels that descended deeper than 47, channels that counted backwards into negative numbers, into frequencies that existed below the threshold of conventional radio, in the subsonic ranges where thought itself could be transmitted. Mile marker minus 247. Forever. Thomas Wright broadcasts on Channel 47, calling to the surface, recruiting the next driver. Because that's what the foundation does. That's what infrastructure requires. That's the price of the open road. And someone has to pay it. Someone always does. The highway system spreads across America like neural pathways, connecting cities like synapses, carrying information like nerve impulses. But beneath every highway, supporting every mile of asphalt, running parallel to every route, is the road beneath, the foundation of trapped drivers, the infrastructure of absorbed consciousness, the price paid in human vehicles to keep the surface system functioning. And Channel 47 broadcasts constantly, eternally, reaching out to compatible drivers, to those who understand at some fundamental level that roads require sacrifice, that transportation demands tribute, that